Chapter 568. The expressions of the experts from the Qin clan had instantly become unsightly when they witnessed this scene. It seemed like Yi Xian was intentionally baiting them to attack. Meanwhile, the old man who led the group from the Qin clan spoke furiously. "He's just putting on an act." As soon as he finished speaking, he turned around to look at Yi Xian who stood nearby. "You can deceive them, but you can't deceive the old man." As he spoke, he charged towards Yi Xian. Suddenly, Yi Xian stood up, and he pointed the soul-suppressing sword at the old man. The old man's expression instantly changed drastically, and he hurriedly stopped and retreated over 100 m back. All the others were speechless. The old man gazed at Yi Xian. Even though he was fine, he was still quite terrified. Yi Xian's attack was too mysterious. Moreover, his intuition told him that Yi Xian was definitely an arrow at the end of its flight, and he just had to press down lightly to destroy Yi Xian. However, he was afraid as well. He was afraid that Yi Xian still had the ability to attack again. However, he was very clearly aware that this might be the best opportunity for him. When he thought up to this point, he was about to attack. Meanwhile, Yi Xian suddenly roared furiously, "All of you, get over here!" His roar was like a thunderclap. All of them looked at Yi Xian. Yi Xian's face was pale and carried a trace of ferocity. He seemed like a wild beast that had gone mad. The old man who led the group from the Qin clan spoke abruptly. "If all of us are suppressed by him, then we'll definitely develop inner demons in the future, and we won't be able to advance by even half an inch." All of them fell silent when they heard this. Just as the old man had said, if they were suppressed by a little kid, then it wouldn't just be bad for their reputation, they would become timid as well. Moreover, it was very likely that their timid hearts would become inner demons. All of them exchanged glances when they thought up to here, and then they charged towards Yi Xian. Yi Xian's face was emotionless as he held the soul-suppressing sword tightly in his right hand, and a strand of formidable energy condensed within his right arm. Right at this moment, several powerful auras suddenly appeared in the distant horizon. The experts of the Qin clan stopped in succession when they saw this scene. The old man in the lead glanced at the sky, and his expression instantly became unsightly. An expert of the Tang clan. At this moment, Yi Xian, who was not far away, suddenly said, "I surrender." The Qin family's experts looked at Yi Xian. In between Yi Xian's brows, an illusory Xiao Ta suddenly appeared. Then, that illusory Xiao Ta floated in front of the Qin family's experts. The people of the Qin clan were stunned. What was this Yi Xian up to? But soon, everyone's eyes fell on the Xiao Ta in front of them. Looking at this Xiao Ta, the expressions of the Qin clan and the others instantly became extremely solemn. Of course, there was even more desire and greed. At this moment, an expert from the Qin clan suddenly looked at the old man in the lead. "Qin Ming, are you going to take it or not?" The old man called Qin Ming suddenly became clear-headed. The experts of the Tang clan were about to arrive. Should he take it or not? An instant later, Qin Ming grabbed the World Prison Pagoda. "Let's go!" As soon as he finished speaking, the people of the Qin clan turned and ran. At this moment, the experts of the Tang clan arrived. Yi Xian suddenly roared angrily, "Qin clan thieves, return my treasure." As he finished speaking, he pointed towards the distance and roared angrily, but he didn't chase. This time, the experts from the Tang clan were Yuelao and Lin Mu. The two of them glanced at Yi Xian, then looked at the horizon. Their expressions were extremely ugly. They had seen Qin Ming take the treasure with their own eyes. Lin Mu said solemnly, "Is the Qin clan rebelling?" Yuelao's face sank. "Chase." As he spoke, he seemed to have thought of something. He looked at Yi Xian and saw Yi Xian's weak appearance. His killing intent rose. Yi Xian said indifferently, "If you don't chase, that treasure might fall into the hands of the Order Alliance." Hearing this, Yuelao fiercely glared at Yi Xian. "Just you wait." As soon as he finished speaking, he and Lin Mu disappeared into the horizon. Not long after the two of them disappeared, another group of experts flew over Yi Xian's head. The experts of the Order Alliance. Yi Xian shook his head with a smile, then turned and left. Very quickly, he found a quiet place, sat down cross-legged, and started to heal his injuries. As for the World Prison Pagoda, it really wasn't in his possession. However, he wasn't worried at all. The self-protection ability of this broken pagoda wasn't just an ordinary level. Moreover, There was the 6th floor and the Emperor Hound within the pagoda. Apart from this, it was simply impossible for others to forcefully enter the pagoda. At the end of the horizon, the people of the Qin clan were madly running. Qin Ming, who was in the lead, was extremely excited. Treasure. He was holding a 4th-dimensional treasure in his hand right now. So long as the Qin clan obtained this treasure and subdued it, then the Qin clan wouldn't have to rely on the Tang clan anymore, and it could even become a top-rate power in the chaotic universe. The time to change their destiny had arrived. At this moment, besides excitement, there was nothing else in Qin Ming's mind. Meanwhile, an expert of the Qin clan by his side said abruptly, "The members of the Tang clan have caught up." Qin Ming's eyes narrowed slightly. "Ignore them." The expert hesitated for a moment, and then he said, "Qin Ming, have you thought about the consequences it would bring to the Qin clan if we take this treasure away?" Qin Ming said in a low voice, "You're saying that the Tang clan and Order Alliance will suppress us?" The expert shook his head. "It's not suppression. It's very likely that they'll annihilate us. My Qin clan doesn't have the ability to protect this treasure." Qin Ming said coldly, "Could it be that we're just going to hand over this treasure?" The expert hesitated to speak. Qin Ming shook his head. "My Qin clan has been lying low for so long, and this treasure is our Qin clan's only hope. We can't give it up. No matter what, we have to give it our all." The expert still wanted to say something, but Qin Ming said in a low voice, "We have no way out. If we don't succeed, we die trying." The expert let out a low sigh and nodded. Just as Qin Ming said, the Qin clan could only give it their all. Behind Qin Ming's group, the Tang clan's Lin Mu and the other experts were madly chasing. Besides them, the experts of the Order Alliance were also chasing. Lin Mu suddenly looked at Xueqi. "Quickly notify the clan. Just say that the treasure has fallen into the Qin clan's hands. Have the clan send reinforcements." Xueqi nodded. In the next moment, he crushed a voice transmission talisman. In the next moment, in the depths of a mountain in the distant southern wasteland world, a group of cavalry suddenly shot into the sky. Behind this group of cavalry was a sea of flames. The Tang clan cavalry. There were only 9 people in this group of cavalry, but every single one of them was at the knowledge realm. Not only that, but every single one of them wore equipment that was at least at the creation realm. The 9 of them rode demon horses, stepping through the air with an imposing aura as they headed straight for the northern wasteland world. Northern wasteland world. Behind Lin Mu's group, the leading black-robed elder said in a low voice, "The Tang clan is calling for reinforcements." As he spoke, he turned to look at an elder beside him. "Call for reinforcements." The elder nodded. He opened his palm and a black jade stone suddenly shattered. North of the northern wasteland world, in ascending heaven city, a group of black-robed people suddenly appeared at the city gates. In the next moment, this group of people disappeared without a trace, like ghosts. Like Liang Dao sect. In a secret room, Emo Wuliang sat on the ground. In front of him, there was a tortoise shell. Beside the tortoise shell, there were several copper coins. Emo Wuliang's right hand pinched his fingers together, and he muttered something. Around him, traces of strange numbers were moving. After an unknown period of time, the tortoise shell in front of him suddenly shattered. The strange numbers around him also disappeared without a trace. Blood slowly flowed out of Emo Wuliang's mouth. After a moment, he stood up and walked to the door. He looked at the end of the horizon, a little dazed. Yi Xian. Fate does not lie in the 4th dimension. How is this possible? At this moment, a bolt of divine lightning appeared above the Liang Dao sect without any warning. In the next moment, boom! The entire Liang Dao sect was directly turned to ashes. After a long time, in the ruins, an elder climbed out. He looked up at the horizon. "I was wrong. I will not calculate his fate anymore." In the skies of the northern wasteland world, Qin Ming led the Qin family's experts in a mad dash. Qin Ming hugged the world prison pagoda tightly. How much longer until the experts of the family arrive? An expert beside him said in a low voice. At most half an hour. However, the experts of the Order Alliance and the Tang family are also on their way. Qin Ming said fiercely, "Ignore them. Fight." As he spoke, they sped up. And behind Qin Ming and the others, Lin Mu, Yuelao, and the others were also madly sprinting. Lin Mu said in a low voice. Yuelao, is the Qin family crazy? Yuelao shook his head. They are not crazy. They are fighting. That treasure is extraordinary. If they can truly control it, at that time, even the Tang family will not be able to do anything to them. Lin Mu was puzzled. Why does Yi Xian want to hand over that treasure? Yuelao fell silent for a moment and then he said, Just now, I saw that his face was pale and his body was weak. Obviously, he had fought with the Qin family just now. Moreover, he is obviously unable to defeat the Qin family by himself. So, he should be handing over that treasure to save his life. Lin Mu thought for a moment, and then he nodded. Forget about him. As he spoke, he looked into the distance. Everyone, speed up. Around half an hour later, Qin Ming and the others arrived before an ancient city. This city was called Myriad Mountain City. It wasn't large, and it had a population of less than 1 million. And this city was a subsidiary city of the Qin family. After entering the city, Qin Ming roared furiously, Sacrifice the formation! As soon as he spoke, numerous pillars of light suddenly shot into the sky from within the city, and they blasted towards Lin Mu and the others who were chasing after them. Lin Mu and the others were instantly forced to a stop. But in the next moment, they started to break the formation madly. In the city below, Qin Ming brought the World Prison Pagoda to a secret room, and then he glanced at the experts of the Qin family by his side. All of you stand guard here. The experts of my Qin family will be here soon. As soon as he finished speaking, he entered the secret room. Within the secret room, Qin Ming gazed at the World Prison Pagoda, and his eyes burned with undisguised desire. Gradually, this desire transformed into greed. A short moment later, he suddenly tapped with his finger, and a drop of blood essence fell onto the World Prison Pagoda. After a moment of silence, the World Prison Pagoda tore open space and vanished. Qin Ming was stunned when he saw this scene. At this moment, the door to the secret room was suddenly opened, and then a white-haired old man walked in. The white-haired old man walked directly in front of Qin Ming. Where's that treasure? Qin Ming was stunned, and he was slightly at a loss. It was here just now. Chapter 569. Hearing Qin Ming's words, the white-haired elder's face became extremely gloomy. What do you mean? Qin Ming panicked. It was here just now. Saying that, he pointed at the space in front of him. It was here just now. The white-haired elder glanced at the space in front of Qin Ming. After a moment, he suddenly looked at Qin Ming's finger. There was still a trace of blood there. Seeing this scene, the white-haired elder's eyes narrowed. You subdued that treasure. Qin Ming was shocked and quickly said, Elder Qin Feng, I didn't. It was just in front of me. The white-haired elder stared at Qin Ming. Hand over that treasure and I won't pursue this matter. Qin Ming's face became slightly pale. He wanted to say something but the white-haired elder's divine sense had already locked onto him. There was killing intent. At this moment, Qin Ming suddenly sobered up. He knew very well that when he brought the treasure in, the Qin family's experts outside saw it. Now that the treasure had disappeared, no one would believe him no matter what he said. He didn't know why the treasure disappeared, but he knew that it was definitely related to Yi Xian. After he calmed down, the more he thought about Yi Xian, the more he felt that something was wrong. How could Yi Xian hand over the treasure so easily? He had fallen for Yi Xian's trick. Qin Ming no longer thought about Yi Xian because he didn't have the mood to think about Yi Xian anymore. He only had 2 choices now. The first was death. The Qin family would definitely think that he had taken the treasure for himself. In the Qin family's hearts, he was definitely not even 1/10,000th of the treasure. If he couldn't take out the treasure, he would definitely die. As for the second choice, at this moment, the white-haired elder suddenly said, Qin Ming, that treasure is related to the Qin family's future. Don't be stupid. At this moment, Qin Ming suddenly turned around and ran. He was extremely fast and escaped from the secret room in the blink of an eye. Seeing this scene, the white-haired elder's expression changed drastically and he quickly chased after him. Outside the secret room, the Qin family's experts were dumbfounded. What was going on? After Qin Ming escaped into the air, he glared at Qin Feng. You want to silence me? Qin Feng. The experts who followed him out also looked at Qin Feng. What was going on? Lin Mu and the others were also stunned. What was the Qin family doing? In the air, Qin Ming stared at Qin Feng. Everyone, this Qin Feng wants to take that treasure for himself. After he took the treasure, he wanted to kill me to silence me. The experts of the Qin family, Lin Mu and the others. Qin Feng looked at Qin Ming. Do you know what you're saying? Qin Ming said sinisterly. Qin Feng, you're still pretending. After I gave you that treasure, you actually wanted to kill me. You traitor of the Qin family. Qin Feng narrowed his eyes. I think you want to keep the treasure for yourself. Qin Ming said angrily. You're slandering me. You are simply deranged. You're even more shameless than that Yi Xian. Qin Feng's face was ashen, his right hand slowly clenched. Qin Ming, old man, it looks like you're really tired of living. As he spoke, he was about to attack. However, Qin Ming suddenly said, Look, he wants to kill me to silence me. All the experts of the Qin family gazed at Qin Feng with rather hostile expressions. Qin Feng was furious when he witnessed this scene. Do all of you believe him? Meanwhile, a group of cavalrymen suddenly appeared in the distant sky, and then the grand formation that enveloped the entire ancient city exploded into pieces. At the same time, the black-robed old man and the others from the Order Alliance had arrived as well. The members of the Tang clan and Order Alliance had surrounded the Qin family with great tacit understanding. However, they didn't attack because it seemed like the Qin family was in internal strife. Qin Feng stared at Qin Ming. Why are you doing this? Why am I doing this? Qin Ming was very clearly aware that he would definitely die if he didn't do this. Moreover, he might have a chance at survival by doing this. Every man for himself, and the world destroys him. Qin Ming gazed at Qin Feng. I should be the one asking you that. Qin Feng's eyes narrowed slightly. Do you think the family will believe you? As soon as he finished speaking, a middle-aged man appeared by his side. As soon as the middle-aged man appeared, the expressions of Lin Mu and the others became solemn. A Dao verification realm expert. Qin Ming's expression became slightly unsightly when he saw this middle-aged man. The person before him was one of the two protectors of the Qin family, Qin Shao. This person's strength was ranked in the top 5 of the Qin family. After Qin Shao appeared, his gaze descended onto Qin Ming. Why? Qin Ming sadly smiled. It looks like Protector Qin Shao doesn't believe me. If you don't believe me, you can search me. Qin Zhao's divine sense enveloped Qin Ming, and the latter didn't resist. After a short moment, Qin Shao frowned slightly. He looked at Qin Feng, and the latter spoke in a low voice. When I entered the chamber earlier, he said that the treasure was gone. I questioned him and he did this. Qin Shao spoke in a low voice. Elder Qin Feng, I want to search you. Qin Feng nodded. Search me then. Qin Zhao's divine sense enveloped Qin Feng, and after a short moment, his frown deepened. Because it wasn't. Qin Shao looked at Qin Ming. Did that treasure escape, or did it fall into Elder Qin Feng's hands? Qin Ming spoke in a low voice. It's in his hands. Not too far away. Qin Feng was enraged. Qin Ming, are you a mad dog? Do you believe that this old man won't slap you to death? Qin Ming was about to speak, but at this time not too far away, Lin Mook suddenly said, Your acting is quite good. The Qin family powerhouses all looked at Lin Mook. Lin Mook smiled. How wonderful. As he spoke, he actually said that the treasure disappeared. Fierce. Admirable. Truly admirable. Not too far away, the black-robed old man from the Order Alliance also said, Truly wonderful. As he spoke, the treasure disappeared just like that. As he spoke to hear, he shook his head and smiled. Everyone, do you still want to say that the treasure has already returned to Yi Xian's hands? Qin Shao looked at the black-robed old man. That treasure has a spirit of its own. For it to escape on its own isn't anything strange. The black-robed old man sighed. I suddenly discover that I feel a bit of sympathy for this Yi Xian. As he spoke, he looked at Qin Shao. Honestly speaking, are you insulting our intelligence? Qin family people. This old man doesn't want to waste words with you. Today, if you don't hand over the treasure, none of you will leave. As his voice fell, 10 black-clothed people suddenly appeared not too far away from Qin Shao and the others. Seeing these 10 black-clothed people, Qin Shao and the others' complexions instantly turned dignified. Law enforcers. These were the most elite powerhouses of the Order Alliance. They were the same as the Tang clan cavalry. But these people weren't very famous because those that had seen them had all died. Law enforcers. Tang clan cavalry. Qin Zhao's complexion became extremely ugly. Let alone these two super influences, even a single one was something that the Qin family couldn't stop. Qin Zhao was silent for a moment. He looked at Lin Mook. Brother Lin Mook, there must be some misunderstanding here. Lin Mook shook his head. Don't try that. If you directly hand over the treasure to me, then I will believe that it is a misunderstanding. Not only will I believe it, but my Tang clan will also believe it. At that time, we will still be friends for generations. Qin Zhao's complexion became ugly. Treasure? He also wanted to know who had the treasure. Thinking of this, he looked at Qin Ming and viciously said, "Is the treasure in your hands or not?" Qin Ming was expressionless. "No." Qin Zhao looked at Qin Feng. The latter coldly said, "You still don't believe in the old man's character?" Not far away, Qin Ming coldly sneered. "In front of that treasure, who would have any character?" When Qin Feng heard this, he was instantly enraged. He turned to look at Qin Ming. "I will slap you to death, you piece of trash." As his voice fell, he directly charged at Qin Ming. Qin Ming's complexion changed. But he didn't wait for death. He immediately charged at Qin Feng. Just like this, the two Dao realm powerhouses of the Qin family began to fight. Not far away, Li Mu and Yue Lao glanced at each other. What was the Qin family doing? This didn't seem like an act at all. At this moment, Qin Xiao suddenly said, "Retreat." As his voice fell, he turned and ran. He knew that no matter how he explained, the Tang clan and Order Alliance wouldn't believe him. In fact, he himself didn't believe Qin Ming and Yue Lao. Seeing that Qin Xiao was about to retreat, Li Mu's expression turned cold. "Kill." As his voice fell, the Tang clan cavalry directly charged at Qin Xiao and the others. At the same time, the powerhouses of the Order Alliance also charged over. Qin Xiao roared, "Kill." As his voice fell, a powerful aura swept out from his body. Somewhere in the boundless mountain range, Yi Xian sat on the ground. In his arms, there was a large pile of divine crystals. Not only that, he also ate many spiritual fruits that Xiao Ling gave him. Backlash. Using the sword soul separation twice in a row had consumed too much of his body's energy. He didn't usually use the sword soul separation because it consumed a lot of energy. With his current ability, he could at most use it twice. After 2 times, he basically had no combat strength left. Therefore, unless there was a special situation, he wouldn't use this sword skill. Now, he also realized that he had a flaw. All of his powerful sword skills and trump cards consumed a lot of energy. Realm. He was currently in the 10,000 Laws realm, and at this realm, it was still difficult for him to completely control his powerful sword skills and trump cards. However, he didn't want to improve immediately. He didn't want to recultivate his realm to be a process. At this moment, the space in front of him suddenly split open, and then, a Xiao Ta flew out. It was the prison pagoda. Yi Xian grinned. "You're back." At this moment, the prison pagoda suddenly collided with Yi Xian's chest. Bang! Before Yi Xian could react, his entire body was directly sent flying. This time, he flew for a distance of 100 zhang. And as soon as he stopped, the prison pagoda appeared in front of him again, and then collided with his chest. Bang! Yi Xian was sent flying again. However, the moment he was sent flying, several flying swords suddenly slashed towards the prison pagoda. However, these flying swords were directly absorbed by the prison pagoda when they approached the prison pagoda. Then, bang 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 bang. In the battlefield, Yi Xian flew back and forth, unable to fight back. After about a quarter of an hour, Yi Xian had just crashed to the ground, and the prison pagoda appeared in front of him again. Yi Xian hurriedly said, "Don't. Let's talk this out. Let's be reasonable. Be reasonable." Chapter 570. The prison pagoda did not attack again. Instead, it entered Yi Xian's body. On the ground, Yi Xian's face was bruised and swollen. His entire body was aching. At this moment, he discovered how terrifying this prison pagoda was. This was definitely stronger than a transcendent sword saint. Moreover, this prison pagoda could even store things. On the ground, Yi Xian lay quietly. At this moment, Tang Qing appeared in front of him. Tang Qing looked at Yi Xian and said calmly, "If you can win, use your fists. If you can't, use reason. You're really something." Yi Xian. Tang Qing sat not far from Yi Xian and said softly, "I never thought that this pagoda would really recognize you as its master." Yi Xian smiled bitterly. "Do I look like a master to you?" Tang Qing's expression was rather complicated. "Young Master Yi, I'm actually very curious. I'm curious as to why it would recognize you as its master?" Yi Xian sat up and said with a smile, "Am I really that unbearable in Miss Tang's eyes?" Tang Qing shook her head. "Young Master Ye's wisdom is unparalleled. You're strong and decisive. A person like you can be called an outstanding person." Yi Xian was stunned, then said, "I've never admired anyone in my life, but I admire Miss Tang Qing." Tang Qing was a little curious. "Admire me? Admire what?" Yi Xian said seriously, "I admire Miss Tang Qing's foresight." Tang Qing was stunned, then laughed. "Young Master Yi, your skin is so thick, it's really rare." Yi Xian chuckled. "Something like skin. There are thousands of people in the world, and they all have tens of thousands of faces. Some people have the same skin, but they lead different lives. Those who laugh on the outside cry on the inside. Those who laugh on the inside cry on the outside. This skin is the most unreliable thing in the world. What's the use of it?" Tang Qing smiled. "So young Master Yi chose to be shameless. A shameless person is invincible, right?" Yi Xian laughed, then said, "Miss Tang, you look much more cheerful. What's wrong? Have you thought it through?" Tang Qing said softly, "So what if I can't get over it? Many a time in one's life, one is like a chess piece that can only be manipulated in one way or another." As she said that, she looked at Yi Xian. "Young Master Yi, don't you feel the same way?" Yi Xian smiled and said, "I only know that I have to work hard in everything, and if there are no results after working hard, then I have no regrets." Tang Qing glanced at Yi Xian with a complicated expression. A moment later, Tang Qing suddenly said, "Young Master Yi, can you let me go?" Yi Xian looked at Tang Qing, who smiled and said, "Just kidding." Yi Xian said, "You can leave." Tang Qing looked at Yi Xian and did not say anything. Yi Xian flicked his finger, and a wisp of white light entered Tang Qing's glabella. Soon, Tang Qing's restriction was lifted. Tang Qing smiled. "Why?" Yi Xian thought for a moment, and then he said, "Miss Tang Qing, I won't play games with you. Letting you go isn't because I have tender feelings for you." Tang Qing smiled and asked, "Then why?" Yi Xian smiled and said, "The Tang family has already given up on you, so it's useless for me to keep you by my side. If I let you go, perhaps you'll remember our relationship and help me in the future. Moreover, I feel that you will definitely not be loyal to the Tang family after you leave, and you might even look for trouble with the Tang family. To put it simply, there's no harm for me if you leave, and it might even be beneficial for me in the future." Tang Qing remained silent for a moment, and then she smiled and said, "Thank you." Yi Xian was slightly puzzled. "Thank me for what?" Tang Qing chuckled and said, "Thank you for your straightforwardness, young Master Yi. Even though you're very thick-skinned, I have to say that you're a very good person. The sword sex abandonment of you is absolutely the greatest loss they've suffered in their lives." After saying that, she turned around and left, but she soon stopped. "Young Master Yi, don't be so gullible in the future, especially women." Yi Xian smiled and said, "I hope that I won't become enemies with Miss Tang Qing in the future. Of course, if that day really comes, Miss Tang can rest assured that my sword is very fast, and I guarantee that you won't feel any pain." Tang Qing nodded slightly. "Take care." After saying that, she disappeared not far away. Yi Xian looked into the distance, and no one knew what he was thinking. At this time, the Emperor Hound's voice suddenly sounded. "Boy Yi, are you interested in this girl?" Yi Xian recollected his thoughts and said with a smile, "What do you think?" The Emperor Hound said, "I think this girl is interested in you." Yi Xian shook his head and smiled. "Brother Emperor Hound, have you rested well recently?" The Emperor Hound said, "Not bad, my strength has improved a lot." Yi Xian quickly asked, "How strong is it?" The Emperor Hound said lightly, "It's equivalent to the Tao-confirming realm." Yi Xian was stunned. "It's that strong?" The Emperor Hound said coldly, "That strong? I'm afraid you don't know when I was at my peak. If I was at my peak, then let me tell you, I could slap these people to death with a single slap. Yi Xian laughed. Then I'll be relying on Brother Emperor Hound to protect me from now on. The Emperor Hound said in a low voice. Boy, even though you've successfully framed that Qin clan, those powers aren't idiots. You can deceive them for a while, but you can't deceive them forever. Yi Xian nodded. I know. The Emperor Hound asked, what do you plan to do next? Yi Xian was about to speak when the World Prison Pagoda suddenly appeared in front of him. In the next moment, the World Prison Pagoda trembled slightly as if it was trying to express something. After a short moment, Yi Xian said in a low voice, Can you speak? The World Prison Pagoda trembled violently and smashed directly towards Yi Xian. Yi Xian's expression changed, and he raised his sword to block. Bang! Yi Xian was instantly blasted back 300 m. The World Prison Pagoda was about to attack again when Yi Xian suddenly said angrily, I'm telling you, don't go too far or else. The World Prison Pagoda suddenly vanished, and a ray of black light flashed. Bang! Yi Xian was blasted flying again. On the ground, Yi Xian crawled up. At this moment, the World Prison Pagoda appeared in front of him, and then it jumped up and down in a very arrogant manner. Yi Xian's face twitched. How did I offend this malefic existence? Meanwhile, the Emperor Hound suddenly said, Has the pagoda spirit woken up? Yi Xian smiled bitterly. I don't know. If the pagoda spirit had woken up, it wouldn't be so childish, right? The World Prison Pagoda was acting quite childish now. The Emperor Hound said in a low voice. Do you think there's something wrong with its intelligence after it was heavily injured? Yi Xian thought for a moment, and then said, That's possible. The Emperor Hound said, Let's not talk about that for now. It seemed to want you to do something just now. Can you understand it? Yi Xian shook his head, and was about to speak when Xiao suddenly appeared in front of him. I can understand it. Yi Xian was slightly startled. You can understand it? Xiao nodded. It wants you to find something. Yi Xian asked, What is it looking for? Xiao turned to look at the World Prison Pagoda, and then she mumbled something, and the World Prison Pagoda suddenly jumped up and down. Yi Xian's expression froze. Brother Emperor Hound, can you understand what they're saying? The Emperor Hound said, You think too highly of me. The world of the big shots is not something that trash like me can understand. Yi Xian. At this time Xiao looked at Yi Xian. It wants you to find that Dao. Dao, Yi Xian said. Dao Law. Xiao quickly nodded. Yes, that Dao Law. Yi Xian asked. It wants to find Dao Law? Xiao nodded her little head. It said that you're too lazy to even look for Dao Law. You're just... At this point she glanced at Yi Xian and did not speak. Yi Xian asked, What is it? Xiao hesitated and then said, It said that you're an idiot. You didn't even chase away the 6th floor. You're really too stupid. Yi Xian's face darkened. You were the one who said that. Little blinked her eyes. It said so. At the side, the prison pagoda trembled, as if expressing something. Xiao said again, It said that I'm right, you're an idiot. You're a big idiot. At this point, she seemed to realize something, and quickly shut up. Yi Xian, Xiao blinked. Did I say something wrong? Yi Xian shook his head. No, you're very outstanding. Really? Xiao giggled and then pointed to the right. It said that there are Dao laws over there, and it wants you to go. Yi Xian looked to the right, and after a moment of silence he nodded, Let's go. With that, he sent Xiao to the prison pagoda, and then disappeared with the prison pagoda. Find Dao laws. To unleash the power of the prison pagoda, the best way was to find Dao laws. Not only could Dao laws repair the prison pagoda, but they could also increase his strength. Given the current situation, he needed to increase his strength as soon as possible. Otherwise, once the Order Alliance and Tang Clan came back to their senses, it would be impossible for him to fight them with his current strength. Under the guidance of the prison pagoda, Yi Xian disappeared into the boundless horizon. Myriad Mountain City. At this time, Myriad Mountain City was a mess. Dozens of Dao realm experts had fought here. How could this place withstand it? And on the battlefield, the Order Alliance and Tang Clan had a tacit understanding not to target each other. Their target was the Qin family. The Qin family only had Qin Xiao, Qin Ming, and Qin Feng left. The rest of them had all perished. As for Qin Ming and Qin Feng, they didn't fight amongst themselves. If they did, then everyone would die. Qin Shao glared at Lin Mu. Brother Lin, do you really have to be so ruthless? Lin Mu said indifferently. Ruthless? Your Qin family acts one way in front of my Tang clan and another way behind my back. Let me tell you, if your Qin family doesn't hand over that treasure today, let alone you, your entire Qin family will perish. Qin Shao looked at Qin Ming and Qin Ming. Do the two of you really want my Qin family to be buried with you? Qin Feng looked at Qin Ming. Even if you don't care about yourself, do you not care about your descendants? Qin Ming fell silent. After a moment, he looked at Lin Mu and the others, saying softly, When that treasure was in the secret room, I wanted to subdue it. However, it suddenly disappeared. If I'm not wrong, it has returned to Yi Xian's side. Lin Mu shook his head and smiled. To be honest, I also feel a bit sorry for Yi Xian. It hasn't been easy for him to live until now. In this kind of situation, you all still want to frame him. Doesn't your conscience hurt? Qin Shao. P.S. A reader said that today is his birthday and asked if I could add more. Of course I can. I wish you a happy birthday. Thank you very much for reading my book, and thank you even more for supporting the original. I will write better stories, become more handsome, and make you all like them even more. Chapter 571. The expressions of Qin Shao and the others instantly became extremely unsightly when they heard Lin Mu. Obviously, Lin Mu and the others didn't believe Qin Ming at all. But it made sense. After all, who would believe him? Meanwhile, Lin Mu's gaze gradually turned icy cold. Qin Shao, I don't have the time to waste with you. Just tell me, hand it over or not? Qin Shao had a ferocious expression on his face. Hand it over? I don't have anything, so what do you want me to hand over? When he spoke up to this point, he gazed at Qin Ming. Do you really want to bury your entire clan with you? Qin Ming spoke solemnly. That treasure really did flee by itself, and it's definitely in Yi Xian's hands now. Qin Shao roared furiously. Do you even believe that? Do you? Qin Ming remained silent. He knew that he couldn't explain himself. At this moment, he realized how severe the situation was. It wasn't just a matter of his own, it was related to the fate of the entire Qin clan. It was absolutely impossible for the Qin clan to resist the joint forces of the Tang clan and Order Alliance. Moreover, the Order Alliance and Tang clan would absolutely not allow him to escape. He had no way out because the Qin clan wouldn't protect him. Moreover, the Qin clan wouldn't even be able to protect themselves. He had no way out. It was a hopeless situation. Qin Ming laughed miserably when he thought up to this point. Greed. Greed is the original sin. There was only a single reason why he'd fallen into such a situation: greed. The moment greed arose, he would be doomed eternally. At this moment, he truly realized that he'd been tricked by Yi Xian. Yi Xian had succeeded in using his greed to divert the attention of the Order Alliance and Tang clan. Yi Xian. Qin Ming's expression gradually turned icy cold when he thought up to this point, and he gazed at Lin Mu and the others. I was the last person to come into contact with that treasure, and it really has fallen into Yi Xian's hands. Lin Mu was about to speak when Qin Ming's body suddenly started burning. He was combusting. Everyone in the surroundings was stunned when they witnessed this scene. Even Qin Shao and the others were stunned. Suicide. Qin Ming had actually chosen suicide. At this moment, Lin Mu and the black-robed old man from the Order Alliance frowned tightly. This Qin Ming wanted to use his death to prove that the treasure wasn't in his hands. On the battlefield, the burning Qin Ming had a crazed look on his face. Yi Xian. Haha. What a good Yi Xian. You caused the old man to die. The old man will not let you off easily. As he spoke, he looked at Lin Mu and the others. Order Alliance, Tang clan, this Yi Xian is not only talented but his intelligence is also outstanding. If you don't take advantage of this opportunity to eliminate him before he fully matures, then it won't be long before you can do anything to him. As soon as he finished speaking, his body was completely engulfed in flames, and it didn't take long for him to turn into ashes. The surroundings were extremely silent. Qin Shao and Qin Feng remained silent. The two of them didn't expect Qin Ming to suddenly do this. Although the three people in front of them were dead, they couldn't commit suicide. The reason why Qin Ming had committed suicide was obviously because he didn't want Yi Xian's plan to succeed. At the very least, he wanted to shift the attention of the Tang clan and the Order Alliance to Yi Xian. Qin Shao looked at Lin Mook not far away. Brother Lin Mook, if my Qin clan really had that treasure, they would definitely save us at all costs. Perhaps, we would directly hand it over to protect ourselves. But now, no one from my Qin clan has come to rescue us. This is enough to prove that the treasure isn't in our hands. You've all interacted with that Yi Xian before. You know better than me how treacherous he is. Moreover, didn't the sword sect fall into his trap in the same way? Yi Xian. Lin Mook and the rest fell silent. Yi Xian. They naturally knew how treacherous he was. This fellow didn't seem like a swordsman at all. This was because he was too shameless, using all sorts of tricks. Moreover, he was extremely shameless. This kind of person was a disgrace to the swordsman. And this kind of person was the most troublesome. Because he was capable of doing many shameless things. At this time, Yuelao suddenly transmitted his voice. Regardless of whether the treasure is in Yi Xian's hands or not, we cannot let these three go. Hearing this, Lin Mook's eyes narrowed. Kill! Kill! The Qin clan was a vassal of the Tang clan, and their actions this time was undoubtedly a betrayal. Under such circumstances, if the Tang clan did not kill the chicken to warn the monkey, wouldn't the other vassal forces have thoughts of rebelling? Furthermore, the words of the Qin clan could not be trusted completely. Whether the treasure was on them or not, they would know once they killed them. As Lin Mook's voice fell, the Tang clan cavalry charged towards Lin Xiao and Yuelao. Seeing Lin Mook and the rest attack, Lin Zhao's expression turned savage. Since you won't let us live, then we'll fight to the death. As soon as he finished speaking, he charged toward the group of Tang clan cavalrymen. On the other side, the black-robed old man and the rest did not make a move. Beside the black-robed old man, an expert asked solemnly, "Should we make a move?" The black-robed old man shook his head. "Watch the show." Suddenly, a shrill cry resounded, and by the time the black-robed old man and the rest looked over, Qin Feng's head had already flown into the air. Crushed! The black-robed old man's expression was extremely solemn when he saw the strength of the 9 Tang clan cavalrymen. These Tang clan cavalrymen were truly strong. Right at this moment, Qin Shao, who was nearby, was suddenly sent flying. At this moment, his left arm was gone. Moreover, only a single Tang clan cavalryman had attacked. Both of them had been fighting one-on-one. However, Qin Shao had been completely crushed. Not too far away, Qin Shao raised his head and took a look. In the distant void, there was an old man looking down from above. This person was the current patriarch of the Qin clan, Qin Zhong. He had arrived a long time ago, but he did not make a move. He just watched silently. Qin Shao stared fixedly at Qin Zhong. "I do not resent the clan. Please protect my family, patriarch." As soon as he finished speaking, he looked at the Tang clan cavalryman, and in the next moment, his abdomen swelled up. In the blink of an eye, a destructive force erupted from within him. Rumble! The space in an area of several thousand meters violently trembled and cracked apart. Not far away, the Tang clan knight held his saber with both hands and leaned his body forward, using his saber as a shield. Just like that, he managed to completely block the power of the explosion. However, he was also forced back nearly 100 zhong. A short moment later, the surroundings returned to calm. Both Qin Shao and Qin Feng had perished. But neither of them had that precious treasure on them. Lin Mu raised his head and saw that Qin Zhong had appeared out of nowhere. Qin Zhong glanced at Lin Mu. "Is that enough?" Lin Mu sneered. "Patriarch Qin, do you think this matter is over?" Qin Zhong shook his head. "Whether or not it's over is not up to you. Let me remind you one last time. Yi Xian gave up that precious treasure of his own accord in order to divert your attention to my Qin family. Do you know what he's doing right now? Do you think he'll be idle? As for Yi Xian, he will definitely take revenge for the smallest grievance. Once he becomes an extraordinary sword saint, coupled with his assassination techniques, I really don't know if your Tang clan cavalrymen will be enough to kill." Lin Mu fell silent. Yi Xian. The Tang clan had never dared to look down on this person. Right now, Yi Xian was only a great sword immortal. But once he became a sword saint, he might even become an extraordinary sword saint. Even transcendent sword saint. At that time, he would definitely be very terrifying. At this time, a voice sounded out from the side. "Patriarch Qin Zhong, Aren't you trying to divert the attention of my Tang clan and the Order Alliance? Lin Mu turned and looked. When he saw who it was, he was stunned. Tang Qing. The young miss of the Tang family. Tang Qing walked in front of Qin Zhong and smiled. Patriarch Qin Zhong, what we are discussing right now is not that precious treasure nor is it Yi Xian, but your Qin family. What was the agreement between your Qin family and my Tang clan in the past? Has your Qin family forgotten your own status? Qin Zhong looked at Tang Qing, not speaking. Tang Qing continued, your Qin family's current actions are betrayal. Do you think my Tang clan will let your Qin family off? Qin Zhong smiled. Then what do you think we should do? Tang Qing smiled faintly. She opened her palm and a beam of white light suddenly flew out. Soon, a figure appeared in front of her. Seeing this figure, all the Tang clan cavalry knelt on one knee. Lin Mu and old Yuelao did the same. Because this figure was the current patriarch of the Tang clan, Tang Yen. Tang Qing bowed slightly to the figure. Tang Qing greets patriarch. Tang Yen said, what is it? Tang Qing said, the Qin family has betrayed us. Tang Qing suggests that we immediately eradicate the Qin family to rid ourselves of this disaster. Not far away, Qin Zhong glanced at Tang Qing but did not speak. Tang Yen asked, how did you escape? Tang Qing's expression was calm. He let me go. Tang Yen asked, why? Tang Qing said, he felt that the family had abandoned me and that I was no longer of any use in his hands. He let me go because I have a grudge against the family. This is beneficial to him. Tang Yen asked again, what do you think? Tang Qing said, I have a grudge against the family. Tang Yen looked at Tang Qing and waited for her to continue. Tang Qing clenched her fists. Of course, I blame myself even more. It was my own stupidity and carelessness that allowed me to be captured by Yi Xian. When she spoke up to hear, she raised her head to look at Tang Yen. From this moment onward, I want the family to never abandon me again. I want to prove to the family that abandoning me was the greatest mistake of the family. The surroundings were extremely silent. Not far away, the black-robed old man glanced at Tang Qing and said softly, this girl. At this moment, Tang Yen suddenly said, from this moment onward, Tang Qing will be promoted to the deputy cavalry commander of the Tang clan. She will be able to freely mobilize 30 cavalrymen, 2 Dao realm experts, a 9-dragon jade pendant, and 1 million divine crystals. She will also be able to freely enter Tiansong Pavilion, Divine Skill Pavilion, Heaven's Abode Holy Lands, and train soldiers. Hearing Tang Yen, the 9 Tang clan cavalry suddenly turned around and knelt to Tang Qing. Greetings, Commander Qing. At this moment, Lin Mu and old Yuelao's expressions changed. Tang Qing's current treatment was something that only the young masters of the Tang clan could enjoy. Moreover, those young masters were fighting for the position of heir. This meant that the patriarch wanted Tang Qing to fight for the position of heir. It also meant that Tang Qing had truly entered the core circle of power in the Tang clan. Lin Mu and old Yuelao hurriedly bowed to Tang Qing as well. Greetings, Commander Qing. The title of Deputy Cavalry Commander of the Tang clan was much greater than that of the Tang clan. Because it was real power. As for the eldest young miss of the Tang clan, it was just an empty title. Tang Qing stood up and bowed slightly to Tang Yen. Tang Qing has not let down the patriarch's expectations. Tang Yen said, return to the Qin clan and discuss it with your 9th brother and the others. You can decide whether to kill them or keep them alive. Besides that, do your best to search for Yi Xian's whereabouts. He's a great threat that cannot be allowed to live. Tang Qing nodded. Understood. As he spoke, he slowly relaxed his hands. His expression was calm, and no one knew what he was thinking. Chapter 572. After Tang Yen disappeared, Tang Qing glanced at Qin Zhong, who was not far away. The latter smiled and said, Miss Tang Qing, you're really good. Tang Qing did not respond to Qin Zhong. She turned to look at Yuelao and the rest. Return to the clan. Soon the group of people left. After Tang Qing and the others left, Qin Zhong looked at the black-robed old man. Sir, would you like to talk? The black-robed old man shook his head. There's nothing to discuss. With that, he turned around and left. Normally, he would want to talk, but now, he didn't want to. Firstly, the Qin clan's betrayal of the Tang clan was extremely shameless. If the Qin clan could betray the Tang clan, then they could also betray the Order Alliance. Secondly, the Qin clan was obviously trying to get the Order Alliance to take over the Qin clan. Once the Order Alliance accepted the Qin clan, the Tang clan would definitely take revenge at all costs for the sake of their reputation. Although the Order Alliance wasn't afraid, the Qin clan wasn't worth it. If the Order Alliance didn't do anything, they would be able to reap the benefits because it was highly possible that the Tang clan would not let the Qin clan off. Although the Qin clan wasn't as strong as the Tang clan, they weren't that weak. If the two clans could fight to the death, that would naturally be good. If not, it didn't matter. In any case, the Order Alliance wouldn't lose anything. Moreover, his current mission was to find Yi Xian. He did not want to be dragged down by the Qin clan. After the black-robed old man and the others left, Qin Zhong remained expressionless. No one knew what he was thinking. A short moment later, just as he was about to leave, a figure suddenly appeared not too far away from him. The figure was like a shadow, and he couldn't see the figure's appearance clearly. Qin Zhong narrowed his eyes and clenched his right fist. The figure laughed and said, "Now it seems that the Qin family is in a very bad situation." Qin Zhong stared straight at the mysterious man. "Who are you?" The mysterious man said indifferently. "He can save the Qin clan." Qin Zhong chuckled. "You." As his voice fell, he flicked his sleeves and the space in front of him trembled. An instant later, an afterimage suddenly appeared in front of him. Qin Zhong's expression changed slightly as he threw out a punch. Boom! Qin Zhong retreated rapidly, and this time, he retreated several thousand feet. At this moment, Qin Zhong's expression turned solemn. The mysterious man said softly, "Do you believe me now?" Qin Zhong glared at the mysterious man. Apart from the Tang clan and the Demon clan, no one can stop the Tang clan. The mysterious man shook his head and chuckled without saying a word. With a wave of his palm, a golden strip of cloth suddenly appeared before Qin Zhong. Qin Zhong's expression changed drastically when he saw the golden strip of cloth. "You!" A million miles to the north of the City of Order in the Eastern Wasteland Domain was a sea region known as the Sky-Concealing Sea Domain. This sea region was boundless and had countless islands. Because the spiritual qi in this sea region was thin, there were no valuable spiritual veins or natural treasures. Therefore, the Order Alliance had never sent anyone to manage this place. It was not worth it to waste manpower here. As for this place, very few people came here, because even though there were many islands here, they weren't very valuable. Standing on the shore, Yi Xian looked at the vast sea in the distance and said softly, "There are Dao laws here?" At this time, the prison pagoda appeared in front of it. It swayed about, as if it was expressing something. The corner of Yi Xian's mouth twitched. He hurriedly said, "Xiaolinger, what is it saying?" Xiaolinger appeared in front of Yi Xian. She glanced at Xiao Ta and said, "It said that Dao Dao Dao." Yi Xian's face darkened. "Dao laws." Xiaolinger hurriedly said, "Dao laws." It said that it's hiding. Hiding? Yi Xian was stunned. He then looked at the prison pagoda. "You're their master. Let it come out." Hearing Yi Xian's words, the prison pagoda seemed a little agitated. It began to jump left and right. As it began to jump, the space in the field began to twist strangely. Yi Xian's eyelids twitched. He hurriedly said, What is it doing?" Xiaolinger blinked. "It's angry." Yi Xian was puzzled. "What's it angry about?" Xiaolinger said, "It said that those Dao laws don't want to return after they escaped. They're all traitors." Yi Xian had a strange expression on his face. He knew that some Dao laws were extremely formidable. For example, Yan Jia had taken human form, but he wasn't willing to return. Obviously, the other high-level Dao laws were definitely thinking the same thing. They'd escaped with great difficulty, so who would want to return? Meanwhile, the prison pagoda started jumping again. Xiaolinger gazed at the prison pagoda for a long time, and then she looked at Yi Xian and spoke in an extremely serious tone. "It said that it lived on the 6th floor for too long. You should ask it to move out." The prison pagoda turned to Xiaolinger. Yi Xian's face darkened. "You said that." Xiaolinger blinked with a very innocent expression. Yi Xian said seriously, "What exactly did it say?" Xiaolinger hesitated for a moment, and then she said, "It said that the Dao law is in this area, but it's hidden. It can't sense it." It wants you to find it. Yi Xian said in a low voice. How do I find it? The prison pagoda started jumping again. The corners of Yi Xian's mouth twitched, and he looked at Xiao Linger. Xiao Linger blinked and said, It said that it doesn't know. Yi Xian was speechless. Meanwhile, Xiao Linger was muttering something to the prison pagoda again. She was slightly excited, and she gestured quickly with her hands. The prison pagoda was jumping as well, and it seemed to be expressing something. After a short while, Xiao Linger calmed down. But she seemed to be slightly unwilling, and then she raised 2 fingers. Her attitude was very firm. The prison pagoda swayed from side to side. Obviously, it didn't agree. Meanwhile, Xiao Linger turned around and disappeared. But it didn't take long for her to reappear. But at this moment, she was holding a sword in her hand. Xiao Linger pointed the sword at the prison pagoda. 1-on-1. Yi Xian was dumbfounded. What's going on? How did they end up fighting just like that? The prison pagoda trembled, and then it smashed directly towards Xiao Linger. Lil Linger shouted angrily, Hey, give me your life. As she spoke, she slashed at the prison pagoda with her sword. Just like that, the human and pagoda started fighting in midair. Yi Xian was dumbfounded. What the hell is going on? In next to no time, Yi Xian's expression became slightly solemn. Because he noticed that Xiao Linger was very strong. It wasn't just the sword in her hand, but she herself was very strong. He knew the strength of the prison pagoda. Ordinary Dao vindication experts were not its match, but at this moment, this Xiao Linger was actually evenly matched with it. This Xiao Linger's strength was like the prison pagoda, forever a mystery. At this moment, the prison pagoda and Xiao Linger suddenly stopped. Xiao Linger hugged her sword and panted, Let's stop first. I'm a little tired. Let's fight another day. The prison pagoda trembled, expressing its agreement. Xiao Linger hugged her sword and returned to the prison pagoda, while the prison pagoda returned to Yi Xian's body. The fight was fast, but it stopped just as fast. Yi Xian was a little confused. After a moment, Yi Xian shook his head. I don't understand the world of the big shots. As he spoke, he looked at the distant sea region. Dao Law. He didn't know what Dao Law it was, but he knew that he had to obtain it. The higher the level of Dao Law, the more terrifying its power. If he could obtain it, it would definitely be of great benefit to him. After a moment, Yi Xian disappeared. Search. Before long, Yi Xian entered the vast sea region. The surroundings were very quiet, and there were no demonic beasts at the bottom of the sea. 2 hours later, Yi Xian stopped on an island. Looking at the vast sea region before him, he frowned. Because he had no clue at all. During these 2 hours, his divine sense swept the surrounding islands and sea region, but he didn't find anything. Where was this Dao Law hidden? Yi Xian was a little annoyed. After a moment, his figure trembled, and he flew into the distance. Before long, Yi Xian arrived on the sea surface. He spread out his divine sense, and not only that, he also used the dragon soul. At this moment, his divine sense covered the surrounding sea region for hundreds of miles. However, there was still nothing. Yi Xian withdrew his divine sense and frowned. At this moment, a whirlpool suddenly appeared in front of him. A moment later, a powerful force sucked him into the whirlpool. Yi Xian's expression changed drastically as soon as he entered the vortex. He slashed forward with his sword. However, nothing happened when the sword slashed down. Yi Xian frowned and hurriedly said, Brother Emperor Dog? There was no response. Shocked, Yi Xian quickly contacted the World Prison Pagoda. However, he was shocked to find that he had lost contact with the World Prison Pagoda. What's going on? At this moment, he realized that he had stopped, and his surroundings were pitch black. He couldn't see anything. Yi Xian frowned slightly. He raised his hand and swung his sword. Pest! The sword light had just appeared, but it disappeared in the blink of an eye. Yi Xian's expression darkened. He opened his palm, and in an instant, countless flying swords slashed in all directions. However, after these flying swords slashed, they disappeared without a sound. All disappeared. Yi Xian's expression was slightly unsightly. What is this place? After a moment, he walked forward, but it was pitch black all around him. No matter how he walked, he felt like he was walking on the same spot. Around 2 hours later, Yi Xian stopped. During these 2 hours, he had used all the methods he could, but it was still useless. He was still trapped here. There was no sound, no light. Even his sword light couldn't survive in this place. In this dark space, besides him and the darkness, there was nothing else. Just like that, another 2 hours passed. At this moment, Yi Xian was starting to feel annoyed because this feeling was too terrible. After an unknown amount of time, Yi Xian suddenly stood up. He slashed forward with his sword, but it was still pitch black all around him. There was no movement at all. Gradually, Yi Xian's expression became slightly ferocious. "Who is it? Come out and fight me." However, there was no movement at all. There was no response at all. Yi Xian's expression was ferocious. He immediately used the Dragon Soul and Dragon Force. Soon, flying swords flew everywhere, but almost in an instant, these flying swords all disappeared into the darkness. Another long time passed. At this moment, he had lost the concept of time. This was because he didn't know how much time had passed since he entered. In any case, he felt like a few years had passed. Torture. Now, he felt like he was being tortured every second of the day. He felt like he was about to collapse. He even wanted to be freed. When this thought appeared in his mind, Yi Xian was instantly shocked. He was so weak. His state of mind was so unbearable. When he encountered difficulties, he would actually want to give up. He would also be angry because of failure, and anger was the expression of an incompetent person. He was a swordsman with a clear sword heart, but at this moment, his state of mind was so irritated. After a long time, Yi Xian finally understood that he had many flaws, but when he was not faced with difficulties, these flaws were not reflected. Human nature. Most of the time, a person's flaws and evil side were well hidden, but as long as there was a chance, they would be completely exposed. Therefore, it was often said that human nature could not withstand tests and scrutiny. However, as a swordsman, he must look straight into his heart, straight into his worst and most evil side. What was the true clear sword heart? Look straight into his heart, recognize it and follow it. Don't run away. I'm the good and I'm the bad. Both good and bad are me. Thinking of this, the sword in Yi Xian's hand suddenly trembled violently. What is a sword saint? Yi Xian said softly, from a mortal to an immortal, from an immortal to a saint, and to become a saint, one must first recognize oneself. That's right, I, Yi Xian, have many flaws. Yes, I, Yi Xian, am shameless. I am shameless. When I see a beauty, I will have crooked thoughts. Yes, I am such a shameless person. Wang! A sword's hum suddenly resounded in this darkness. Chapter 573. In the darkness, the hum of the sword resounded and did not stop for a long time. The sword could communicate with the mind. Yi Xian sat cross-legged on the ground, his eyes slightly closed, and a sword quietly floated in front of him. Understanding the heart. At this moment, he understood one thing, and that was to clearly understand his own heart. A person could deceive anyone in the world, but he could not deceive his own heart. The heart was the truest mirror in the world. Yi Xian stood up and opened his palm. In his palm, a sword spun violently. The sword contained two kinds of sword intents. Good and evil sword intents. At this moment, his sword intent had undergone a transformation, and with the support of this sword intent, the soul-suppressing sword in his hand had also undergone an earth-shattering transformation. At this time, Soul's voice suddenly sounded, "Congratulations, young master, your sword path has entered the sage realm." Sword sage? Yi Xian said softly. What is the difference between a sword sage and a sword immortal? Specifically. After a moment of silence, Soul said, "Young master, can you feel your own sword intent?" Yi Xian opened his left hand, and soon, the two kinds of sword intents enveloped him. After a while, he discovered that his sword intent seemed to have something more inexplicable than before. At this time, Soul suddenly said, "Young master's sword intent has a trace of spiritual intelligence than before." Spiritual intelligence? Yi Xian asked, "What do you mean?" Soul said, "All things have a spirit, and so does sword intent. Of course, whether a sword intent can have a spirit or not depends on its master. Young master's state of mind has improved, and he has a more thorough understanding of himself and the sword, and this understanding has directly led to the transformation of young Master Sword Intent. This transformation is a living being. Young Master Sword Intent has a spirit, and its power and effect are at least 50% higher than before. In other words, after young Master became a sword sage, his strength also increased by at least 50%. Increased by 50%. Yi Xian opened his palm, and the sword in his hand suddenly flew out. The sword was faster than lightning. This speed was indeed at least 50% faster than before. Now, he was confident that he could kill a knowledge realm powerhouse head-on. If it was an assassination, he could even try to kill a Dao validation powerhouse. At this time, Little Soul suddenly said, "Young Master, you must not be arrogant and complacent. Becoming a saint may just be the beginning." This sword Dao entering sainthood is like a Genesis Dao expert who has just come into contact with its Dao. The word Dao is broad and profound, and involves far too many things. It's not something that can be understood in a day. Yi Xian nodded. Understood. As he spoke, he glanced around. "Little Soul, do you know where this place is?" Little Soul said in a low voice. "I don't know. This place is very strange. Young Master must be careful." Yi Xian nodded. He held onto his sword and walked towards the distance. At this moment, his sword intent began to spread out in all directions. Not only that, but he also used the power of the Dragon's Soul. With the support of the Dragon's Soul, the sword intent became even more powerful. But in next to no time, Yi Xian noticed that his sword intent was being destroyed by a mysterious force. Yi Xian's expression turned cold when he noticed this, and then he turned around and vanished. In an instant, countless rays of sword light crisscrossed within this expanse of darkness. Swish! A tearing sound suddenly resounded in this darkness, and soon, a ray of white light appeared not far away from Yi Xian. Seeing this, Yi Xian hurriedly flashed forward and charged directly into the ray of white light. A moment later, Yi Xian felt a gust of cold wind. At this moment, he had returned to the sea. Yi Xian greedily absorbed everything around him, and a moment later he said softly, "As expected, only when everything is lost does everything seem so precious." Just now in that darkness, he truly felt that time passed like a year. That feeling was even more terrifying than when he had fought a dozen Dao realm experts. Endless darkness without any hope. It was a slow torture. "Are you the new master?" At this moment, a voice suddenly resounded not far away from Yi Xian. Yi Xian suddenly opened his eyes. Not far away from him stood a woman in a black dress. The woman looked less than 20 years old, wore a black dress that was as black as ink, and there was a bit of cinnabar between her brows. Yi Xian said in a low voice, "You are the Dao Law." The woman looked at him coldly and didn't speak. At this moment, Yi Xian suddenly patted the prison pagoda lightly. "Come out." However, there was no movement from the prison pagoda. Yi Xian was stunned. Not coming out? At this moment, he could already sense the prison pagoda. The Dao Law was right before him, but this fellow actually didn't come out. What's the meaning of this? As if he had thought of something, Yi Xian's expression suddenly changed, and he cursed in his heart. Could it be that it can't defeat the prison pagoda, so it doesn't dare to come out? When he thought of this, cold sweat instantly flowed down Yi Xian's back. That's entirely possible. Even though the prison pagoda is formidable, what's its current state? It's half crippled. Under such circumstances, it might really be unable to defeat the Dao laws of these monsters. At this moment, the woman in a black dress suddenly said, "You're so weak, so why did it choose you as its master?" Yi Xian looked at the woman in a black dress, and he hesitated for a moment before he asked, "Am I very weak?" The woman in a black dress frowned slightly. "Are you not weak?" Yi Xian thought for a moment and said, "Why do you think I'm weak?" The woman in a black dress gazed at Yi Xian. She didn't speak, but she suddenly flicked her sleeve. Yi Xian's expression instantly changed drastically, and he raised his sword to block it. Bang! In an instant, Yi Xian retreated explosively by over 1 kilometer. Moreover, the space in an area of 3 kilometers in front of him had turned pitch black. Moreover, his right hand had lost all feeling. Yi Xian's expression instantly became extremely solemn. Meanwhile, a woman walked out from within the pitch-black space. It was the woman in a black dress. The woman in the black dress glanced at Yi Xian. "Weak." Yi Xian fell silent. Now he knew why the prison pagoda didn't come out. The current prison pagoda was definitely unable to defeat the woman in a black dress. Moreover, based on what she said, she probably knew that he had the prison pagoda, and she didn't seem afraid at all. Meanwhile, the woman in a black dress suddenly said, "Make it come out." Yi Xian hesitated for a moment, and then he said, "Why don't you go in?" The woman's eyes narrowed slightly. "Do I look very stupid?" Yi Xian was speechless. The woman gazed at Yi Xian and asked, "Why did it choose you?" Yi Xian thought for a moment, and then he said, "Miss, firstly, my current strength isn't very strong indeed. However, don't you think that I have a lot of potential?" "Potential?" The woman spoke coldly. "You have a hair. You don't even have a hair." Yi Xian was dumbstruck. This woman is using vulgarities? The woman gazed coldly at Yi Xian. "Make it come out. I'm going to beat it to death. It actually chose such a weak person to be its master. I want to see if it's blind." Yi Xian's face sank, and he roared furiously in his heart. "You can even tolerate that? Come out and beat it." There was no movement in the prison pagoda. At this moment, Xiao suddenly said, "It wants you to beat it." Yi Xian was furious. "I can beat it, and you want me to call you over?" Xiao suddenly said, "Do you want me to beat it for you?" Yi Xian hurriedly nodded. "All right." When Xiao held that sword, her combat strength was extremely terrifying. As soon as Yi Xian spoke, Xiao instantly appeared in front of him, and she was holding a sword in her hand. Xiao glanced at the woman in a black dress in the distance. She hesitated for a moment, and then she looked at Yi Xian. "Sorry, my stomach hurts. I'll talk to you later." After she finished speaking, she turned and ran back into the prison pagoda. Yi Xian's expression froze. Why does that sound so familiar? Right at this moment, the woman in a black dress suddenly vanished on the spot. Yi Xian's expression instantly changed drastically. He stabbed swiftly with his sword. An ray of cold light flashed like a bolt of lightning. Bang! An explosion resounded, and then Yi Xian's figure was pushed over 1 kilometer back. As soon as he stopped moving, he suddenly felt the scene before him darken. This time, he didn't dare hold back at all, and he immediately utilized his dragon soul energy and dragon energy. At the same time, 2 types of sword intent swept out from within him. Slash! As soon as Yi Xian spoke, a ray of light slashed down forcefully. Hiss! A sharp sound of something tearing apart resounded. Rumble! As soon as Yi Xian's sword slashed down, his figure was blasted flying again. This time, he flew for almost 3 kilometers. As soon as he stopped, a wisp of blood seeped out from the corner of Yi Xian's mouth. Yi Xian wiped off the blood from the corner of his mouth, and his expression was quite unsightly. My first battle as a sword saint is already so miserable. Meanwhile, the woman in a black dress appeared before him again. She gazed coldly at Yi Xian. "Hand it over." Yi Xian was furious, and he thought to himself, "You asked me to look for the Tao Law, and now I've found it. Why aren't you coming out? Are you just going to watch me get beaten up?" Xiao said, "It said that it didn't ask you to get beaten up, so you can hit her. I think what it said makes sense." Yi Xian was speechless. Meanwhile, the woman in a black dress was about to attack again, but Yi Xian turned around and fled. He was extremely swift, and he vanished into the horizon in the blink of an eye. The woman in a black dress was stunned. He ran. He ran just like that. Obviously, she hadn't expected that Yi Xian would actually run. In the next moment, she chased after Yi Xian. At the end of the horizon, Yi Xian was dashing madly on his sword. Meanwhile, Xiao voice resounded abruptly. "It asked you not to run and to hit her, cripple her, and then drag her in here so that we can torture her together." Yi Xian's face darkened. "Ask it if it knows whether it can or can't beat her." Xiao said, "It said that it'll hit you if you continue running." Yi Xian flared up with rage. "Can you not bully the weak and fear the strong? Can you have some backbone? Can you come out and fight her head-on? Can you not hide in there like a turtle?" After a moment of silence, Xiao suddenly said, "It asked you why you can't defeat her." Yi Xian thought for a moment, and then he said, "I really want to know the answer to that as well." Right at this moment, the woman in a black dress suddenly appeared in front of Yi Xian, and Yi Xian stopped. She gazed at Yi Xian. You actually fled. Yi Xian was just about to speak when the space on his right suddenly rippled violently, and then a woman walked out. The person who came was Zhao Mu. Yi Xian's expression instantly became unsightly when he saw Lin Mook. Misfortune never comes alone? When Lin Mook saw Yi Xian, she clenched her right hand tightly. However, right at this moment, over 100 meters to Yi Xian's right, the space there suddenly split open, and then a group of black-clothed people floated out. The person in the lead was the black-robed old man from the Order Alliance. Moreover, the 9 black-clothed figures behind the old man were all Knowledge Realm experts. This group had just appeared when a ray of white light flickered over 30 m to Yi Xian's left, and then 11 people suddenly appeared. It was the Tang clan's Lin Mook, and there were 9 Tang clan cavalrymen standing behind him. Yi Xian was speechless. P.S. Who else is celebrating their birthday? Step forward, I want to see just how thick-skinned you can be. Chapter 574. Everyone was here. Yi Xian had calmed down instead. All of them intended to kill him. So, here's the problem. Who should I let kill him? He didn't dare to answer or ask. The atmosphere here had become quite strange. Regardless of whether it was the Order Alliance, the Tang clan, Zhao Mu, or the woman in a black dress, none of them attacked first. Meanwhile, Yi Xian suddenly said, Everyone, why don't we sit down and have a chat? What's the point of fighting and killing every single day? Let's calm down, have some tea and chat. Life is still very beautiful. Shut up. The woman in a black dress suddenly glanced at Yi Xian, and then she gazed at the members of the Order Alliance. Where did all of you come from? Fuck off right now. Yi Xian hurriedly gave her a thumbs up. How domineering. At this moment, he kind of liked this black-dressed woman's hot temper. The black-robed old man from the Order Alliance frowned slightly when he heard her. Who are you? She was just about to speak when Yi Xian hurriedly said, She's my big sister. The woman in the black dress looked at Yi Xian. Yi Xian hurried to shut up. Then he stood there quietly, motionless. Big sister? The black-robed old man gazed at her and was about to speak when she suddenly vanished. At the instant that the woman in black disappeared, the expressions of everyone in the surroundings changed drastically. It was especially so for the black-robed old man. He crossed his arms before swiftly sweeping them forward. Bang! The others hadn't even recovered from their shock when the black-robed old man was blasted over 1 kilometer away. Moreover, his arms had vanished as soon as he stopped moving. The expressions of everyone here instantly became extremely solemn when they witnessed this scene. Zhao Mu glanced at the black-robed woman but didn't speak a word. She gazed coldly at the black-robed old man's group. Trash! The black-robed old man stared fixedly at her with an extremely solemn expression. Who are you? The black-dressed woman ignored the black-robed old man. Instead, she turned to look at Yi Xian, who had retreated hundreds of feet away. Are you trying to run? Yi Xian shook his head. No. The black-dressed woman pointed at the black-robed old man and the others. Are they here to kill you? Yi Xian nodded. The black-dressed woman said angrily. They came to kill you and you ran? You are the Tower Master. Take charge of the 5 dimensions. At this point, she suddenly stopped. Yi Xian asked, What's in charge of the 5 dimensions? Everyone turned to look at the black-dressed woman. The black-dressed woman suddenly turned to look at Lin Mook and the others. She angrily said, What are you looking at? As soon as she finished speaking, she stomped her right foot. Boom! The space in front of her collapsed in an instant and a powerful force swept towards Lin Mook and the others from the pitch-black space. Boom boom boom! In an instant, Lin Mook and the others were blasted thousands of feet away. Seeing this scene, Yi Xian's eyelids twitched. This woman's strength was definitely that of a Dao validation expert. At this moment, Zhao Mu suddenly looked at the black-dressed woman. She had also been blasted back, but she had only been blasted back a few feet. Seeing Zhao Mu look over, the black-dressed woman raised her brows. Unhappy. Zhao Mu nodded. In the next moment, she dashed forward like a cheetah that had been waiting for a long time. Her speed was so fast that even Yi Xian couldn't see her clearly. The black-dressed woman sneered and directly punched towards Zhao Mu's fist. Simple and direct violence. As soon as their fists collided, boom! The surrounding space violently trembled. Neither of them retreated. Both of them forcefully withstood each other's strength. At this moment, the black-dressed woman's fist suddenly spun forward. Boom! The space in the surroundings instantly cracked apart, but Xiaomu actually didn't move at all. The black-dressed woman's brows knit together slightly when she witnessed this scene. Meanwhile, Xiaomu suddenly unclenched her fist and opened it. After that, she grabbed the black-dressed woman's fist and twisted it. In an instant, a powerful force swept out from the center of her palm. Suddenly, a ray of black light surged out from her palm. Bang! In an instant, the space in an area of 3 kilometers turned pitch black. The expressions of the experts from the Order Alliance and Tang Clan changed drastically, and they hurriedly retreated explosively. On the other hand, 2 women were in a fierce battle in that pitch-black space. Their battle hadn't just caused the space in the surroundings to shatter apart. Even the islands below them had been transformed into powder by the aftershock of their attacks. Lin Mook and the black-robed old man had extremely solemn expressions on their faces. Because the strengths of the black-dressed woman and Zhao Mu weren't ordinary. It could be said that these 2 women far surpassed everyone else present here. No, there's still Yi Xian. When they thought of Yi Xian, Lin Mook, the black-robed old man, and the others looked towards where Yi Xian stood. However, it was empty now. He fled. Their expressions instantly became unsightly. Meanwhile, the black-robed old man hurriedly gazed at the 2 women who were still fighting in the distance. Stop fighting. Yi Xian has fled. Yi Xian has fled? The 2 women stopped fighting nearby. When they looked towards where Yi Xian stood, they frowned at the same time. Meanwhile, the black-robed woman suddenly pointed at the black-robed old man. Why didn't you say so earlier? The black-robed old man's face twitched. Is she a devil? How can I be blamed for this? The black-robed woman's face turned livid with rage, and she grew angrier the more she thought about it. Suddenly, she charged at the black-robed old man. The black-robed old man's expression changed drastically when he witnessed this scene. He didn't have the ability to fight at all. But it didn't take long for 9 black-clothed figures to obstruct his path, and then 9 rays of cold light formed a square formation that enveloped the black-robed woman. A moment of silence ensued. Bang! An enormous explosion resounded as the square formation shattered, and the 9 black-clothed figures were blasted back repeatedly. After she blasted them back, the black-robed woman intended to continue attacking. But a moment later, her brows knit together slightly, and she raised her head to look up into the sky. An invisible pressure had suddenly condensed in the sky, and at the same time, black clouds had condensed. The black-robed woman blinked when she witnessed this scene, and then she turned around and left. She was extremely swift and vanished in the blink of an eye. After she left, the pressure in the sky calmed down, and it didn't take long for it to vanish completely. Everything returned to normal. Zhao Mu had turned around and vanished as well. Only the members of the Tang Clan and Order Alliance remained here. Both sides had extremely unsightly expressions on their faces. They'd allowed Yi Xian to flee again. Meanwhile, the space in front of Lin Mook suddenly trembled, and it didn't take long for a voice to resound. Return to the clan. Return to the clan. Lin Mook led the Tang Clan cavalry behind him and left. The black-robed old man remained silent for a long time before a transmission talisman suddenly flew out from before him. He gazed at the transmission talisman for a very long time before he finally spoke in a light voice. Guardian Qin Tian. I'm useless and have failed numerous times. Guardian, please replace me with someone else. A moment later, a voice suddenly sounded in front of the black-robed old man. Approved. Hearing this, the black-robed old man immediately felt relieved. He was a little afraid of Yi Xian. This time it was only 2 arms. Next time, who knew what would be broken? Furthermore, his intuition told him that for a person like Yi Xian, the Order Alliance wouldn't be able to deal with him. If they really wanted to target Yi Xian, they should have sent a supreme expert, or even a Star Lord himself, to directly kill Yi Xian and eliminate all future troubles. If this dragged on, it was tantamount to giving Yi Xian time to grow. And this Yi Xian's growth rate was very fast. It wouldn't be long before even a Dao-proving realm expert wouldn't be a match for Yi Xian. The black-robed old man shook his head and sighed. Actually, he knew that the higher-ups of the Order Alliance were definitely aware of the problems he was thinking about. He also knew that the higher-ups had their worries. They were worried that if they were to forcefully attack Yi Xian, then it would cause the conflict between the Order Alliance and the Tang clan to escalate. Because the Tang clan would absolutely not allow that treasure to fall into the hands of the Order Alliance. Moreover, it was exactly because of this reason that Yi Xian had been able to survive until now. No matter what, all of this had nothing to do with him now. A short while later, the black-robed old man led everyone away. As for Yi Xian, he didn't even want to think about Yi Xian. Just thinking about him gave him a headache. Tang Clan, Hall of Heroes. The Hall of Heroes was a hall that the Tang clan used to discuss matters. Ordinary disciples of the Tang clan didn't have the qualifications to enter this hall. In front of the Hall of Heroes, there was a statue of a woman. The statue was vivid and lifelike, just like a real person. The woman wore a white floral dress and her long hair draped over her shoulders. There were a few small braids in between her long hair. In her right hand, she held a book titled Time and Dimensions. This woman was the most stunning genius in the history of the Tang clan. Mu Nanji. She was also the first female head of the Tang clan in history. Logically speaking, her surname should be Tang. However, she had always insisted that her surname was Mu. The Tang clan members didn't dare to disobey her and could only obey her orders. Below the statue of the woman, there was a sentence. Who said that women were inferior to men? It was because of this sentence that the status of women in the Tang clan had changed greatly. In the Tang clan, women had the same authority and status as men. The education, cultivation and resources that only men could enjoy in the past were also available to women. In fact, women could also become the heir or the head of the family. Moreover, there was no such thing as status in the Tang clan. If the son of the clan leader wasn't good enough, he would still be eliminated. If the son of a servant was strong enough, he could also be promoted. In short, if you can do it, then do it. The current patriarch of the Tang clan, Tang Yen, was once the illegitimate son of a down-and-out disciple of the Tang clan and a maidservant. The Hall of Heroes was usually empty because the patriarch would only gather the experts of the Tang clan to discuss important matters within the hall. Today, there were over 30 people standing within the hall. The weakest amongst them was at the Dao realm. Some were old, some were young, and there were even many women. Tang Qing was amongst them as well. The hall was very silent. A long time passed before a figure suddenly appeared within the hall. Everyone present bowed in unison. Greetings, Patriarch. It was the patriarch of the Tang clan, Tang Yen, one of the 6 great experts of the Tang clan. Tang Yen said, "Let's put the matter of the Qin clan aside for now. Today, we'll discuss Yi Xian. Perhaps everyone here doesn't know him very well. Tang Feng, tell us about him." A young man walked out from below. He was the 9th young master of the Tang clan, Tang Feng, and he was one of the contenders for the position of heir. Tang Feng bowed slightly to everyone here, and then he said, Yi Xian was born in Qingqing's Yi clan. His mother is a daughter of the Dugu clan from the upper dimensions, and his father's identity is unknown. He came into contact with the sword Dao at the age of 18, and he became a sword immortal at the age of 19. There's a mysterious person standing behind him, and his identity and strength are unknown. His strengths are extremely high natural talent in the sword Dao, meticulous thinking, decisive in killing, firm will, loyal to his friends, thick skin, and not inflexible. He does what others don't and is capable of what others can't. When he spoke up to hear, he paused for a moment before he continued. His weaknesses are loyal to his friends, and he cares too much about his younger sister and friends. If my Tang clan can't defeat him head-on, then we can attack his friends and family, especially his younger sister, and crush him with a single strike. Chapter 575. Everyone in the hall gazed silently at Tang Feng. Tang Feng smiled and said, "Of course. My Tang clan is a large clan after all. If we can't deal with a single Yi Xian and target his friends and younger sister, then it would be beneath our dignity." Meanwhile, a man walked over from nearby, and he smiled and said, "Ninth brother, you're wrong. A man should naturally not be bothered by the trifles. My Tang clan has been able to stand until now not because of benevolence or so-called morality." Everyone looked at the man who spoke. He was the 2nd young master of the Tang clan, Tang Yi. He was also one of the people fighting for the position of heir of the Tang clan. Tang Feng smiled and said, "Second brother is right. However, My Tang clan is a large clan. If we can't deal with Yi Xian and target his younger sister and friends, aren't we afraid of being ridiculed by the world? Tang Yi shook his head and smiled. Why should the strong care about what the weak think? Would an elephant care about what the ants think? Tang Feng smiled. That's second brother's attitude and thoughts. However, I insist on my own opinion. Tang Yi smiled. Then let the patriarch make the decision. Everyone looked at Tang Yan. Meanwhile, Tang Yan looked at Tang Qing. Qing, what do you think? Everyone looked at Tang Qing when they heard this. They were rather surprised. Tang Feng looked at Tang Qing as well, and he still had a smile on his face. Tang Yi closed his eyes slowly, and no one knew what he was thinking. In the hall, Tang Qing suddenly said, "The Tang clan knows nothing about the person behind Yi Xian." Some of the people here frowned when they heard this. The person behind Yi Xian. Tang Qing glanced at them and said, "Why did that treasure fall into Yi Xian's hands? Who is Yi Xian's father? Why did the Star Lord's clone vanish without a trace that day? And the experts from countless other stellar regions? Who could have instantly wiped them out? Was that person a single person or a power? My Tang clan knows nothing about it." Tang Yan suddenly said, "Continue." Tang Qing nodded and said, "My Tang clan is one of the strongest powers in the world, but I feel that we shouldn't underestimate anyone even more. Especially this Yi Xian. Such a precious treasure was actually in his hands. This matter itself was strange. Moreover, this person has an evil beast with him. An evil beast from the era of the god race." Evil beasts. Hearing this, an old man suddenly asked, "An evil beast from the god race era?" Tang Qing nodded. "I saw this beast when I was with him. This beast is indeed an evil beast of the god race." Beside her, Tang Feng suddenly said, "Big sister, are you talking about the demonic beast beside him in the never-ending starfield?" Tang Qing nodded. "Yes." Tang Feng nodded slightly. "I was blind. I can't even recognize this beast's true origin." Tang Qing looked at Tang Yan. "Clan leader, I think that we should wait and see for now. There are two reasons. First, it's not just my Tang clan that wants that treasure. The Order Alliance also wants it. Even the Demon clan might have secretly made a move. Apart from that, the disciple of the Southern Sect's martial master, Zhao Mu, is also looking for Yi Xian. All these signs show that someone is more anxious than us. At this moment, whoever makes the first move will force Yi Xian to reveal his trump card or the person behind him. The second reason is that no matter who obtains that treasure, they will become the target of everyone. Even if it's our Tang clan, once we obtain that treasure, we will definitely force the Law and Order Alliance to ally with the Monster Clan. Because they will definitely not allow us to become the strongest clan in the world. With that, she returned to her original position. At this time Tang Yan said, "What do you think?" A Tang family elder looked at Tang Qing. "But if we wait and see, what if that treasure falls into the hands of the Order Alliance?" Tang Qing said softly, "What the elder is worried about should be what all of you are worried about. Actually, we can let the clan leader restrain the Astral Lord. If the Astral Lord does not move, the clan leader will not move. Under such circumstances, if the Order Alliance wants to obtain that treasure, then they will definitely have to send someone to kill Yi Xian. Besides the Astral Lord, there shouldn't be anyone in the Order Alliance who is 100% confident in killing Yi Xian. In this way, once the Order Alliance wants that treasure, then they will definitely have to fight Yi Xian to the death. At that time, our Tang clan can just watch from the shadows and act when it's necessary." Tang Feng suddenly said, "What Big Sister means is that we won't make the first move, but we won't give up either. Whoever makes the first move, and if Yi Xian can't win or is killed, then we'll act at that time." "Right." Tang Qing nodded. "The more we want to obtain that treasure, the calmer we have to be." When she spoke up to this point, she paused for a moment before she continued. Ancestor Nanji once said that it's easy to conquer a country, but it's difficult to defend it. Our Tang clan's current status wasn't easy to obtain, so we can't take a single wrong step. Because a single step might lead to eternal damnation. As she spoke up to this point, she looked at Tang Yan. "Patriarch, I've finished speaking. Everything is up to you." Tang Yan said, "Does anyone have a different opinion?" Meanwhile Tang Yi suddenly looked at Tang Qing. "What Big Sister means is that not only can we not make the first move, We have to stop the Order Alliance from obtaining that treasure. In other words, we're protecting Yi Xian? Tang Qing smiled. Second brother, are you trying to say that I'm siding with Yi Xian? Tang Yi smiled. Big sister, you've misunderstood. Tang Qing chuckled. I'm a member of the Tang clan. As soon as she finished speaking, she fell silent. A member of the Tang clan. Tang Yi glanced at Tang Qing and didn't say another word. Because if he did, then he could be targeted. It was extremely unwise to do so at a time like this. Meanwhile, Tang Yan suddenly stood up. We'll do as Tang Qing says. As soon as he finished speaking, he vanished. But it didn't take long for him to appear once more. There's something strange about the Qin clan. Don't get involved. I'll deal with it myself. As soon as he finished speaking, he vanished. Along with Tang Yan's disappearance, the others left successively. As soon as Tang Qing left the main hall, Tang Yi's voice suddenly came from behind her. Big sister, are you really not angry at all when the clan abandoned you? Tang Qing stopped and said softly, Of course I'm angry. But I'm more angry at myself. If I'm outstanding enough, I think the clan will definitely protect me at all costs, right? Tang Yi smiled. Big sister, you've really seen things through. Tang Qing said softly, Second brother, there's only one heir apparent. Everyone wants it, and I want it too. However, we might just be whetstones for others. Tang Yi smiled. Big sister, you're trying to tell me that you're not my enemy, right? Tang Qing smiled. Second brother, you should know that in your heart. I'm just reminding you. Tang Yi looked at the statue of Mu Nanji in front of him and said softly, I believe in fate, but I want to fight for it. As soon as he finished speaking, he turned around and left. In the hall, Tang Qing walked to the statue of Mu Nanji. Looking at the statue in front of him, Tang Qing fell into deep thought. On an island in the concealing sky sea, Yi Xian sat cross-legged in front of a fruit tree, absorbing divine crystals. At this moment, he still had some lingering fear. That black-dressed woman's strength was really too strong. And that Zhao Mu. That woman was also very heaven-defying. Fortunately, the two of them were people with explosive tempers. They would start fighting at the slightest disagreement. Otherwise, he wouldn't have stood a chance. At this moment, the World Prison Pagoda appeared in front of Yi Xian. It began to jump rapidly. Xiao Linger appeared beside him. She glanced at the World Prison Pagoda, then looked at Yi Xian. It said, Why did you run? You should capture her and bring her in. Yi Xian said, I can't beat her. Xiao Linger asked. It asked why you can't beat her. Yi Xian pointed at the World Prison Pagoda. You ask it, why doesn't it dare to come out and fight? Xiao Linger looked at the World Prison Pagoda, and a moment later, she looked at Yi Xian. It said you're good at lying, right? Trick her into coming in. Yi Xian almost fainted. What was going on with this World Prison Pagoda? Did it have the intelligence of a 3-year-old? Why would it ask such idiotic questions? Yi Xian was about to speak, but at this moment, the space nearby suddenly trembled. Then, a woman walked out. It was that black-dressed woman. Yi Xian's face fell as soon as he saw the woman in the black dress. She had actually come looking for him. At this moment, Xiao Linger suddenly said, It was the one who called her here. Yi Xian was stunned, then pointed at the World Prison Pagoda. It was the one who called her here? Xiao Linger nodded. Yi Xian almost fainted when he heard this. Motherf asterisk cur. Is this stupid pagoda crazy? Not far away, the black-dressed woman walked in front of Yi Xian, and the World Prison Pagoda and Xiao Linger disappeared. Yi Xian. The black-dressed woman looked at Yi Xian. Why aren't you running anymore? Yi Xian said calmly. You also want this pagoda? The black-dressed woman said coldly. What do I want this stupid pagoda for? Yi Xian said. Then why are you chasing me? The black-dressed woman suddenly clenched her fists. She was very angry. You are the pagoda master. How can you be so weak? You can't be so weak. Yi Xian hurriedly said. Calm down first. You have to understand, I am very young now. I am only 18 years old. 20. The black-dressed woman looked coldly at Yi Xian. From your bone structure, you are at least 20. Yi Xian's mouth twitched. 20 it is, I am only 20. I am still a child. Oh no, I am still a youth. How strong do you expect me to be? The black-dressed woman said coldly. Let it come out. Yi Xian said solemnly. It wants you to enter. The black-dressed woman's mouth curled into a cold smile. Do you think I am stupid? If I enter, I will be controlled by it. Yi Xian hesitated, then said, Don't you want to go back? The black-dressed woman looked at Yi Xian as if looking at an idiot. It is so fun outside, why go back? Yi Xian hesitated, then said, Are you from the fifth dimension? The black-dressed woman shook her head. No. Yi Xian was stunned. Then you, the black-dressed woman said calmly. When we were conscious, we were already in this stupid pagoda. Speaking of this, she suddenly became angry. This stupid pagoda! I told it not to fight. It insisted on fighting, said it could win. This idiot was almost broken by them, and caused us to be almost scattered. This big idiot is so stupid I want to cry. Yi Xian. Chapter 576. The more she spoke, the more agitated she became. In the end, she suddenly looked at Yi Xian and said angrily, Get it out. I'm going to kill it. This idiot. Yi Xian smiled bitterly. It's not coming out. The woman in the black dress said angrily. Then I'll hit you. With that, she punched at Yi Xian from afar. Yi Xian did not dare to be careless and slashed forward. TCH. A sword beam flashed down. Boom. The sword beam exploded instantly. At that moment, Yi Xian had already retreated 1,000 feet away. His expression was a little grim. If this went on, his whereabouts would definitely be exposed. The woman in the black dress was about to attack again when Yi Xian suddenly said, That's enough. The woman in the black dress frowned slightly. What's enough? Yi Xian said seriously, When experts fight, we should stop when it's too late. We've already exchanged one move, so we should stop when it's too late. The woman in the black dress blinked and her brain short-circuited. Yi Xian hurriedly took the opportunity to say, I have to say that you're the most powerful Dao Law I've ever seen. You're the first person I admire. The woman in the black dress was expressionless. Are you sucking up to me? Let me tell you, I won't fall for it. However, I feel that although you're a little weak, you're an honest person and have some redeeming qualities. Yi Xian was speechless. The woman in the black dress said again, You've seen other Dao laws? Yi Xian hurriedly nodded. Yes. There's the Grand Dao Law, Space Dao Law, and Dream Dao Law. The woman in the black dress frowned slightly. Let me see. Yi Xian hurriedly activated the Grand Dao Law. Soon, a tiny earth character appeared on his glabella. Grand Dao Law. Upon seeing this Grand Dao Law, the woman in the black dress took a look at Yi Xian. What else? Yi Xian hurriedly took out the Space Dao Law and Dream Dao Law. A moment later, the woman in the black dress asked, Do you know how to use them? Yi Xian nodded. I know. As soon as he finished speaking, he opened his palm. Very quickly, the power of the earth and the surroundings rapidly gathered towards him. Not long after, a sword condensed in his hand. Yi Xian waved the sword in his hand at the black-dressed woman. Look. The black-dressed woman glanced at Yi Xian. That's it. Yi Xian nodded. The black-dressed woman's gaze suddenly became somewhat pitiful. Yi Xian suddenly felt hurt. He quickly asked, Is there another way to use it? The black-dressed woman said indifferently, No. Yi Xian smiled. Understood. Understood. You're afraid that I'll defeat you after mastering it. The black-dressed woman sneered. Are you joking? Do you know how powerful I am? Yi Xian said calmly. Then what are you afraid of? The black-dressed woman sneered. You still want to provoke me? Do I look like an idiot to you? Yi Xian sighed softly and did not say anything. The black-dressed woman said coldly, What are you sighing about? Yi Xian said, Yenjia told me that if I encounter the Dao Law of the fifth floor, I must seek guidance from her because the Dao Law of the fifth floor is very powerful. The black-dressed woman frowned. You've seen Yenjia? Yi Xian nodded. Yes. The black-dressed woman sized up Yi Xian with a strange expression. Yi Xian asked, What's wrong? The black-dressed woman suddenly appeared in front of Yi Xian. Yi Xian's expression changed slightly. However, he did not attack because this black-dressed woman did not have any killing intent. The black-dressed woman did not have any killing intent towards him from the beginning until now. Otherwise, he would have taken out the soul-subduing sword and risked his life. The black-dressed woman stared at Yi Xian. Do you know why I didn't kill you? Yi Xian hesitated before saying, because I'm handsome. The black-dressed woman suddenly slapped down. Bang! Yi Xian was instantly blasted 300 m away. As soon as he stopped, the black-dressed woman suddenly appeared in front of him. You're able to control that damned pagoda now, right? Yi Xian did not dare to be mischievous and immediately nodded. The black-dressed woman looked Yi Xian in the eye. I'll teach you how to use the Tao law. However, you have to do me a favor. Yi Xian asked. What favor? The black-dressed woman spoke indifferently. I want to enter the pagoda to recuperate. However, so long as I enter, that damned pagoda might forcefully control me. So, you have to help me not to let it control me. Yi Xian fell silent. He had never expected that the black-dressed woman actually had such an intention. No wonder she had not aroused any killing intent towards him from the beginning until now. Yi Xian retracted his thoughts and said, I'm afraid I can't do anything about it if it wants to forcefully control you. Even though he was the pagoda master, the pagoda paid no attention to him most of the time. The black-dressed woman spoke indifferently. Don't worry. So long as you agree to stand on my side, then it won't be able to do anything to me, nor will it be able to do anything to you. Yi Xian hesitated for a moment and said, Is there a way to control it? The black-dressed woman laughed coldly. What do you think? Yi Xian thought for a moment and said, How about this? I'll make it come out, and we can discuss it. Otherwise, it's very likely that things will become very tense. He was quite worried as well. He was worried about the pagoda. Because if he joined forces with the black-dressed woman, then the pagoda would definitely be in a very bad mood. He didn't want internal strife to occur within his body every single day. The black-dressed woman remained expressionless. Up to you. Yi Xian nodded, and then he immersed his consciousness into his body. Xiao Ta, if you really don't come out, then there's no way to discuss it. Don't worry, she won't harm you while I'm here. The three of us can't even defeat a single one of us. There was no movement from the pagoda. Yi Xian's face sank. Is she really that afraid of death? Right at this moment, Xiao Ling suddenly appeared in front of Yi Xian. She was holding a Xiao Ta in her arms. It was the pagoda. Xiao Ling blinked. It asked me to bring it out. Yi Xian was speechless. The black-dressed woman glanced at the pagoda with a rather complicated expression. Yi Xian asked, What's wrong? The black-dressed woman said softly, It's very heavily injured, and its intelligence has been damaged. Otherwise, with its temper, you would have been reincarnated a long time ago. Yi Xian was slightly curious. Its temper is bad? The black-dressed woman said indifferently. It's so bad that you can't imagine it. It was once in a starfield, and it was affected by a battle between two people. So, it destroyed that entire starfield. Yi Xian was speechless. The black-dressed woman looked at the pagoda. I'll be recuperating inside the pagoda, and I'll also help you stabilize it. However, you can't control me, or I'll kill you. The current you can't beat me. You have to understand this, understand? The pagoda trembled as if it was responding to something. Xiao Ling said, It said that it can beat you in the future. Yi Xian was speechless. The black-dressed woman shook her head. It's so stupid that it's cute. After saying that, she directly entered the pagoda. Inside the pagoda, the black-dressed woman looked around. Finally, she looked at the top of the pagoda. When she saw the two swords at the top of the pagoda, she said indifferently, Pagoda Master, when are you going to take these two swords out? They're just a waste of space here. Yi Xian was speechless. Inside the pagoda, Xiao Ling appeared in front of the black-dressed woman. Xiao Ling looked at the black-dressed woman. The first, second, third, fourth, and fifth floors are all mine. In addition, the sixth, seventh, eighth, and ninth floors are all mine. If you don't agree, I'll... The black-dressed woman was expressionless. What? Are you going to hit me? Xiao Ling thought for a moment. Then she said, Violence can't solve problems. I'm trying to reason with you. I'm trying to communicate with you. You'll be reasonable, right? The black-dressed woman thought for a moment. Then she said, You can plant them, but can I eat them? Xiao Linger hurriedly nodded. You can eat them. You can eat whatever you want. But you can't eat the trees. If you eat the trees, they won't grow back. The black-dressed woman nodded. All right. Xiao Linger nodded. I'm Xiao Linger. What's your name? The black-dressed woman thought for a moment. Then she said, Are you? As she spoke, she suddenly gazed at the emperor dog that was lying on the ground not too far away. She walked over to the emperor dog. The emperor dog opened its eyes, and there was a trace of vigilance in them. Ayu sized up the emperor dog and said, Pagoda Master, can this be eaten? The emperor dog was speechless. Yi Xian's face darkened. Don't do anything rash. Ayu said seriously, Pagoda Master, its bloodline isn't bad. If you eat it, then your strength will definitely improve greatly. Yi Xian said seriously, Miss Ayu, it's my friend. Ayu shrugged. Do whatever you want. If it's not your friend in the future, then I'll eat it if you don't. The emperor dog was terrified when it heard that. Ayu paid no attention to the emperor dog, and she just walked upstairs. Xiao Linger floated over to the emperor dog and sized it up. She was slightly curious. Are you really delicious? Can I have a taste? The emperor dog was speechless. Ayu arrived at the 5th floor. At this moment, the 5th floor had been filled with spirit trees by Xiao Linger. Ayu spoke softly. Has the person on the 5th floor left or? Yi Xian replied. He's been killed. Ayu's brows knit together slightly. He's so strong that you probably won't be able to kill him. Yi Xian said, I didn't kill him. It was the sword master at the top of the pagoda. Ayu's eyelids twitched. The sword master isn't dead? Yi Xian was speechless. Ayu's expression returned to normal. Who appeared? Yi Xian said. All 3 of them. Ayu blinked. A long time passed before she said, Are they familiar with you? Yi Xian thought for a moment and said, Quite familiar. Ayu fell silent. Yi Xian asked, What is it? Ayu spoke softly. It's not as simple as I thought. Forget it. I don't care. I'm going to rest. Yi Xian hurriedly said, How do I use that Tao law? Ayu replied, You have to wake it up and restore its consciousness, and then establish a spiritual connection with it. After that, you'll fuse with it. At that time, you'll be the Grand Tao Law. So long as you step on the ground, you'll be able to obtain the energy of the earth. If you're slightly more formidable, you'll even be able to obtain the energy of the earth veins. If you're even more formidable, you'll even be able to obtain the energy of the earth spirit. At that time, you'll be the master of the earth. Do you know how formidable that is? To put it simply, you can make the entire world tremble with just a stomp of your foot. You're using it to condense it into a sword now, which is simply a foolish act. Which idiot taught you this? Yi Xian replied, The sword master at the top of the pagoda taught me that. The pagoda of prison suddenly fell silent. A short while later, Ayu suddenly said, What did I say just now? Why don't I remember anything? Yi Xian was speechless. P.S. Many readers have birthdays today. I've always thought that I was very thick-skinned, but I never imagined that there would always be someone stronger. Chapter 577. Yi Xian shook his head and smiled when he heard Ayu's words. It seemed that the irascible Ayu was very fearful of the owner of the 3 swords at the top of the pagoda. But this was normal. After all, the pagoda and the Tao laws had become like this because of the 3 of them. Yi Xian collected his thoughts and asked, Miss Ayu, how do we awaken the Tao laws? On the 5th floor, Ayu said, Find a place with the power of the earth veins and activate it with the power of the earth veins. Yi Xian asked, Is the power of the earth different from the power of the earth veins? Ayu said angrily, Aren't you just talking nonsense? The power of the earth is the power of the earth, and the power of the earth veins is the power of the earth veins. For example, men and women are both human, but are you the same as women? Are you the same? Yi Xian was speechless. Ayu said again, Go east, keep going. There is the power of the earth veins there. Yi Xian nodded. He glanced at the surroundings and then vanished. Before long, he arrived at the depths of the mystic sea. Ayu told him to keep going, so he didn't stop and sped up. It didn't take long for him to completely vanish above the boundless sea. Northern Wasteland World. Sky Ascension City. Standing in Sky Ascension City, one could pluck stars with their tentacles. The entire Sky Ascension City was extremely tall, as if it stood in the starry sky. This was the most mysterious place in the Northern Wasteland World, and it was also the headquarters of the Order Alliance. Over 40 people stood in the Sky Ascension Palace, and the weakest among them was a Tao Realm expert. The palace was very quiet, as if they were waiting for someone. About 15 minutes later, a middle-aged man appeared at the entrance of the palace. The middle-aged man wore a tight white robe, and his long hair draped over his shoulders. His brows were filled with a heroic spirit, and he held half a book in his hand. The Star Lord. This person was the Star Lord of the Order Alliance. Everyone present bowed in unison when they saw the Star Lord. The Star Lord walked to the stone steps of the palace, sat down, and said softly, "Let's talk about Yi Xian." At that moment, Protector Qin Tian walked out. Yi Xian comes from a small world. He came into contact with the Sword Tao at the age of 18 and is now a sword immortal. This person is extremely talented in the way of the sword, and the person behind him is even more unfathomable. However, I don't know who exactly it is. An old man suddenly asked, "Even we can't find anything?" Protector Qin Tian nodded, "No information at all." The old man frowned. "Is it from the God Nation? Divine Kingdom?" The expressions of everyone here instantly changed when they heard this. Although this faction had not appeared for a long time, as long as one was a member of the Order Alliance, they would never forget this faction. The body of Gu Tatian, the most outstanding Star Lord of the Lawful Order Alliance, was still hanging in the God Burial Plain. At this moment the Star Lord suddenly said, "It's not them." Everyone looked at the Star Lord, and the latter looked at a skinny old man with his eyes closed. In the hall, only this skinny old man was sitting. Master Ku. This person was the military advisor of the Order Alliance. His position in the Order Alliance was only second to the Star Lord and two other special existences. Seeing the Star Lord looking at him, Master Ku opened his eyes and said softly, "The Order Alliance isn't the only ones who want that supreme treasure. The demon race, Tang clan, and some other old monsters also want it. However, everyone knows that whoever touches Yi Xian will be the first to suffer. Because the supreme treasure's power is limited in Yi Xian's hands, and Yi Xian can't change anything. Please continue to the next page. But if it falls into the hands of the major forces, it'll be completely different. Therefore, if we want to obtain that supreme treasure, we must first deal with the Tang clan and the demon race, not Yi Xian. Of course, we can't underestimate the Southern Sect's martial masters either. Similarly, they must first deal with us if they want to obtain that supreme treasure." The Star Lord nodded slightly. "Continue." Master Ku stood up. "It's precisely because of the concerns I mentioned that Yi Xian is still able to do as he pleases. During this period of time, the old man has researched Yi Xian. Not only did Yi Xian rely on his talent and strength, but he also relied on his intelligence. Of course, it's mostly because of his background. Is Yi Xian a person or a force? Or something else? We don't know anything about it." At this moment, Qin Tian suddenly said, "Master Ku, what do you think our Order Alliance should do now?" Master Ku said with a smile, "We have two options now. First, we can learn from the Tangs and wait and see. We will attack whoever attacks first. Second, we can attack first and use all of our strength to kill Yi Xian in one hit. However, we'll definitely be stopped by the Tang clan and the demon race." An old man suddenly asked, "Will they dare to fight us?" Master Ku replied softly, "They definitely will. Because once the supreme treasure falls into our hands, they can only bow down to us in the future. Just like us, we'll stop them at all costs if they try to snatch it from us." At this moment, Guardian Qin Tian suddenly said, "There's a third choice." The third choice. Everyone looked at Qin Tian. The latter said, "This person has a fatal weakness, and that's his younger sister. If we can control his younger sister, this person will be a sword of our Order Alliance. He can only slash wherever we want him to slash." Master Ku smiled. "That's true. However, we'll have to attack the Wu Yuan sword sect if we want to control his younger sister. Although they no longer have their ancestor's clone, we'll still suffer heavy losses if they die together. Qin Tian smiled. If you don't want to sacrifice anything to obtain that treasure, that's impossible, isn't it? Master Ku shook his head. Guardian Qin Tian, you've overlooked something. How do you know that the Tang clan and the demon race won't attack us when we attack the Shenwu city? What if the mantis stalks the cicada, unaware of the aureole behind it? Qin Tian replied, this will depend on the determination of my alliance. If we fight, we'll have to end it as soon as possible. As he spoke, he looked at everyone. Yi Xian is good at hiding. Unless the Star Lord takes action personally, we won't be able to find him. Even if we find him, we won't be able to kill him, especially when the Tang clan and the others are secretly stopping us. If we control his younger sister, he'll come to us. Master Ku shook his head. Guardian Qin Tian is right. However, there's a problem. What if we force Yi Xian to join the Tang clan or the demon race? Qin Tian smiled. He won't. Because to Yi Xian, his younger sister is more important than his life. Also, now that the Shenwu city has lost its trump card, we can take this opportunity to devour it. If we devour the Shenwu city, I'm sure I don't need to explain the benefits. Devour the Shenwu city. Everyone in the hole was tempted. The sword sect and Wu Yuan in the Shenwu city had been passed down for so many years, so there must be a lot of treasures. Most importantly, there was a divine pulse in the Shenwu city. Divine pulse. That was the thing that everyone was tempted by. At that moment, the Star Lord who had been silent all this while. This chapter is not over. Please flip the page. He suddenly looked at Qin Tian. Are you confident in taking down the Shenwu city? Qin Tian nodded. Yes. However, we need support. The Star Lord asked, 20 enforcers, 2 Dao validation realm and 30 Dao realm. Is that feasible? Qin Tian nodded. Yes. This lineup was enough to crush the sword sect and Wu Yuan in the Shenwu city. The Star Lord nodded. I'll leave this to you. Master Ku will lead the rest. Pay attention to the Tang clan and the demon race and stop them from supporting the Shenwu city. Then, he got up and disappeared. Master Ku looked at Qin Tian. Be careful of Yi Xian. Don't underestimate him. Qin Tian nodded. I'll have to trouble you with the Tang clan and the demon race, Elder Ku. Master Ku nodded and left with everyone. Qin Tian also left. Filling Sky Sea region. After flying on his sword for about 2 hours, Yi Xian arrived at a small island. The island was huge, and it was the largest island he had seen in this part of the sea. Yi Xian stood on the ground, and the great Dao Law suddenly condensed between his brows. Yi Xian said, Miss Ayu, what should we do now? Inside the prison pagoda, Ayu said, use the great Dao Law to sense the surrounding earth force, then use the earth force to sense the power of the earth vein in the depths. Finally, absorb the power of the earth vein. After that, it might wake up. Upon hearing that, Yi Xian hurriedly did as he was told. Soon, with the help of the earth force, he sensed the surrounding earth force. The boundless power of the earth. He hurriedly followed the earth force to sense the earth vein that Ayu mentioned. After a long time, Yi Xian said in a deep voice, Miss Ayu, I don't feel it. Ayu said, then cry. Yi Xian was speechless. Ayu said, do you think it's that simple? Use your concentration. The earth vein is hidden in the depths. If you don't use your concentration, then how would you be able to sense it? Yi Xian nodded. He calmed himself in concentration, and a short moment passed before he started to slowly sense the earth vein again. However, he still didn't sense anything after a long time passed. Yi Xian fell silent for a short moment before he utilized the dragon soul. As soon as he utilized the dragon soul, his spiritual energy and soul instantly multiplied. Just like that, around an hour passed before Yi Xian's expression suddenly changed. Because he sensed a trace of faint energy. It was extremely similar to the energy of the earth vein, but it was even purer. The energy of the earth vein. Yi Xian knew that it was definitely the energy of the earth vein. He continued searching, and it didn't take long for him to notice more and more energy of the earth vein. All of it was hidden extremely well and very difficult to notice. Meanwhile, Ayu suddenly said, activate the great Dao Law and absorb it. Yi Xian hurriedly did as he was told when he heard this. In next to no time, The energy of the earth vein started to converge towards him while the color of the great Tao Law between Yi Xian's brows grew darker and darker after it absorbed the energy of the earth vein. Around an hour later, the great Tao Law between Yi Xian's brows suddenly trembled violently, and then a strand of dazzling golden light erupted from it. At this instant, Yi Xian suddenly raised his head, and a strand of formidable energy shot into the sky from within him. At this moment, he really felt like he was the master of the world, and he felt like he could defy the heavens. End of this chapter. Chapter 578. Power. At this moment, Yi Xian felt like his body was filled with boundless power. It made him feel like he was invincible. Suddenly, the Tao Law between his brows started to tremble violently. Yi Xian's expression changed. "What's going on?" Yu said. "It's about to wake up." Yi Xian spoke solemnly. "Will it attack me when it wakes up?" Yu replied. "I don't know." Yi Xian was speechless. Yu continued. "If it attacks you, use the pagoda to suppress it. It's already within the pagoda, so it can't defeat the pagoda." Yi Xian heaved a sigh of relief when he heard this. That's good. Otherwise, if every single Tao Law was like Yu, then it would be impossible for anyone to live. Suddenly, the energy of the earth and the veins of the earth in the surroundings vanished. The Tao Law gradually calmed down as well. Yi Xian gazed at the Tao Law in silence. Suddenly, the Tao Law turned around and fled. Yi Xian was speechless. Yu suddenly spoke angrily. "What are you still standing there for? Hurry up and chase it." Yi Xian hurriedly chased after it, but he noticed that the Tao Law was running really quickly. Meanwhile, Yu said, "Activate this damn pagoda. Get it to help." Yi Xian hurriedly activated the prison pagoda. This time, the prison pagoda didn't refuse, and it immediately appeared between his brows. In the next moment, a strange force flashed, and it didn't take long for the Tao Law to be enveloped by a mysterious force. In the next moment, it vanished on the spot, and when it appeared again, it was in front of Yi Xian. Yi Xian was about to speak when the prison pagoda smashed against the Tao Law. Bang! The Tao Law was blasted flying, and the prison pagoda smashed against the Tao Law. Yi Xian was speechless. A moment later, the great tunnel suddenly flew in front of Yi Xian. It stuck close to Yi Xian as if it was asking for help. The world prison pagoda still wanted to charge over. Yi Xian immediately said, "Stop, it already knows its mistake. Don't hit it again." The prison pagoda stopped. It bounced left and right before returning to Yi Xian's body. Yi Xian looked at the great Tao Law in front of him. "Why did you run?" After a moment of silence, a voice suddenly sounded in Yi Xian's mind. "I'm afraid." His voice was a little immature, like that of a child. Could talk. Yi Xian was stunned. Then he asked, "What are you afraid of?" The voice sounded again. "Afraid of it." Yi Xian shook his head. Needless to say, he was definitely talking about the world prison pagoda. This Xiao Ta was definitely not a kind person in the past. He had to be more careful in the future. Yi Xian collected his thoughts and said with a smile, "Don't be afraid. Just follow me, okay?" The great Tao Law fell silent for a while before it said, "All right." After that, it flew directly into the space between Yi Xian's brows and hid in Yi Xian's sea of consciousness instead of returning to the world prison pagoda. As for Xiao Ta, he didn't care about the great Tao Law as long as it didn't run away. At this moment, Yu suddenly said, "It can fuse with your soul now. In other words, you can completely borrow all of its power. Of course you have to know." Yi Xian was puzzled. "What do you mean?" Yu said, "You're so weak right now, so you can't bear too much earth energy and earth vein energy, let alone the legendary earth spirit energy. So, you have to restrain yourself when using it, otherwise, you'll explode." Yi Xian nodded. "I understand." As he spoke, he carefully sensed the great Tao Law in his divine sense. It had to be said that this power was truly too tempting. However, this power didn't belong to him. Because without the great Tao Law, he wouldn't have this power. Strictly speaking, it was still external help. But now, he couldn't give up on these external help. Regardless of whether it was the Order Alliance or the Tang clan, both were much stronger than him. Under such circumstances, he could only wait for death if he still gave up on these external help. As if he'd thought of something, Yi Xian asked, Miss Yu, what Dao law do you possess? He was very curious about a Yu as well. Yu said, none of your business. I'm telling you, don't even think about it. Otherwise I'll kill you. Yi Xian shook his head and smiled. This woman's temper wasn't ordinary, and it could be compared to the great god from the second floor. The great god from the second floor. Actually, he noticed that he actually missed the great god from the second floor. I wonder where she's gone now. A short moment later, Yi Xian shook his head and was about to leave. However, the space before him suddenly trembled. Return to Divine Martial City quickly. Your younger sister is in danger. Your younger sister is in danger. Yi Xian's expression instantly changed when he heard this, and then he vanished on the spot. He was very familiar with the person who passed the message. It was Tang Qing whom he'd let go. Tang Clan. Hall of Heroes. All the powerhouses of the Tang Clan had gathered in the hall. The leader was Tang Yen. Below, Tang Qing said, I've received accurate news that the Order Alliance is going to attack Divine Martial City. Tang Yi smiled. See, we won't touch Divine Martial City, but the Order Alliance will. Saying that, he looked at Tang Qing. Big sister. Do you have any countermeasures? Tang Qing said in a deep voice, we can't let the Order Alliance destroy Divine Martial City. Above, Tang Yen said. Reason. Tang Qing said in a deep voice, the Order Alliance is definitely doing this for Yi Xian's younger sister, Yi Ling. Once they control Yi Ling, it's the same as controlling Yi Xian. In that case, Yi Xian will become their sword. At that time, not only will they control the fifth-dimensional treasure, but they'll also have a super swordsman killer. Everyone should be very clear about Yi Xian's strength. If it's an assassination, even knowledge realm powerhouses won't be able to stop it. Even Dao validation powerhouses won't be able to stop it. Saying that, she looked up at Tang Yen. I suggest that we immediately send someone to stop it. Tang Yen looked at Tang Yi and Tang Feng. Do you have anything to say? Tang Feng pondered for a while and said, the Order Alliance must be on guard against our Tang Clan and the Demon Clan. If we attack, it means we'll have a falling out. Tang Yi smiled. Falling out will happen sooner or later, and sooner or later, we'll have to do it. Why don't we attack first? However, I don't agree with helping them. Everyone looked at Tang Yi. Tang Yi said, first, Divine Martial City is not as weak as we think. Don't forget that they were at their peak. With such a foundation, they must have some trump cards that no one knows about. Just like our Tang Clan, who would know our trump cards before we face the real threat of extinction? Second, we all think that Wu Yuan's sword sect only has one ancestor's clone, but what if they have two? Such a powerhouse, even if it's just a clone, is not something a Dao validation powerhouse can contend against. Third, why do we have to protect Yi Xian's sister? Can't Yi Xian protect her himself? And if he wants to protect them, he will definitely fight the Divine Martial Arts City with everything he has. At that time we just need to watch quietly and see what kind of trump cards this Yi Xian has, and we can also see what other trump cards the Divine Martial Arts City has. Tang Feng nodded. Let them exhaust each other, and we'll attack at the last moment. Tang Yi looked at Tang Qing and smiled. What do you think, big sister? Tang Qing nodded. Both of you have a point. Let the clan master decide. Tang Yi smiled and didn't say anything else. Instead, he looked at Tang Yen. Above, Tang Yen said, don't make a move for now. Let's wait and see. As soon as he finished speaking, he disappeared. The experts of the Tang clan retreated in succession. Outside the hall, Tang Qing looked at the distant sky, thinking about something. Divine Martial City. Ever since the last incident, the Divine Martial City had been heavily guarded. Not only that, but all the experts from the martial institution and the sword faction had returned to the sect. Wu Yuan. In a martial arts arena, a little girl was fighting with an old man. The little girl was extremely swift like a ghost, and her attacks were extremely ruthless. Every single attack was aimed at the old man's vital points. However, the old man easily dealt with them. The little girl was Yi Ling, and the old man was the previous dean of Wu Yuan, Wu Wen. After a short while, the two of them stopped. Wu Wen looked at Yi Ling and said, you're still not fast enough, and your combat awareness is lacking. However, it's much better than last time. Yi Ling bowed slightly. Grandpa Wu, I'll work harder. Wu Wen smiled. He had to admit that he really liked the little girl before him. Perhaps it was because she'd suffered too much in Pine City, but Yi Ling didn't have the slightest air of a pampered disciple from a wealthy clan. Moreover, she was extremely sensible. Wu Wen smiled and said, "Don't be too impatient. You can't rush things in battle. You have to take it slow." Yi Ling nodded her head. Just when she was about to speak, an explosion that sounded like a clap of thunder resounded in the sky above the academy. Immediately after, a huge hole was torn open in the sky, and very quickly, 30 people flashed out from it like ghosts. When they appeared once again, they were already above Wu Wen and Yi Ling. Wu Wen's expression instantly changed drastically. "It's the law enforcers. Activate the formation." As soon as he finished speaking, he pulled Yi Ling behind him, and then he suddenly waved his right hand. An enormous golden shield smashed towards the group of black-clothed figures. Right at this moment, numerous cold rays of light flashed by, and then the golden shield instantly shattered into countless pieces. In the next moment, a few tens of cold rays of light slashed towards Wu Wen. Wu Wen's pupils constricted abruptly. He suddenly pressed his palms together and pressed them forward. Heavenly Spirit Palm. Bang! An enormous palm suddenly stretched out from the space in front of him, and then it smashed towards the black-clothed figures. However, this enormous palm hadn't even approached the black-clothed figures when it was directly slashed into pieces. However, right at this moment, a sword howl suddenly resounded from the distant horizon. In the next moment, an old man appeared directly in front of Wu Wen, and then an expansive light surged out and instantly forced the black-clothed figures over 100 m back. The person who'd arrived was the Sword Sect's extraordinary sword saint, Yu Wuchen. Besides that, countless Sword Sect swordsmen had suddenly left the Sword Sect and arrived at Wu Yuan. There were an entire 12 Dao realm swordsmen, and there were even 2 Dao validation realm swordsmen amongst them. On the other hand, all the experts of Wu Yuan had obstructed Wu Wen and Yi Ling's path, and Enlancio, Xia, and the others had appeared as well. In midair, Qin Tian looked down at everyone below him, and his eyes didn't contain a trace of emotion. Kill! He didn't waste his breath. P.S. Yesterday, this reader, Unfettered One, chatted with me for half the night, and he asked me to just update 2 chapters every day. He said that sitting for too long isn't good for the kidneys, and sitting for too long will cause impotence. He asked me not to follow in his footsteps. So, I didn't dare to write anymore after writing 2 chapters yesterday. Chapter 579. Kill. As soon as he finished speaking, the 30 law enforcers charged towards Wu Wen and the others. They were like ghosts and were extremely swift. Besides them, besides Yu Wuchen, all the other experts from the Sword Sect who had rushed over to Wu Yuan were stopped. Yu Wuchen himself was just about to attack when 2 powerful auras enveloped him. 2 Dao proving realm experts. Yu Wuchen didn't dare to be careless, and he said in a low voice, "Brother Wu Wen, watch out." As soon as he finished speaking, he transformed into a ray of light that shot towards the 2 of them. The 2 Dao proving realm experts didn't dare to be careless. The person before them was an extraordinary sword saint. In next to no time, the 3 of them were engaged in an intense battle above Wu Yuan. Meanwhile, the Dao realm experts from Wu Yuan charged towards the law enforcers as well. However, they were instantly crushed. The difference in strength was really huge. Meanwhile, a figure suddenly charged towards Wu Wen and Yi Ling. It was extremely swift, and it arrived before Wu Wen in the blink of an eye. Wu Wen's expression turned ferocious. He clenched his right hand into a fist and punched forward. Bang! When he punched out, a powerful force swept out from his fist like a volcano eruption. It was a terrifying sight. Meanwhile, the black figure in front of Wu Wen suddenly punched as well. It was a very simple punch. However, the force released by Wu Wen's fist instantly vanished without a trace. In the next moment, Wu Wen retreated explosively. The figure didn't chase after Wu Wen, and it charged towards Yi Ling instead. Yi Ling's face was expressionless as he watched the figure charge at him, and there wasn't a trace of fear on his face. Right when the figure approached Yi Ling, a spear suddenly tore through the air beside him. The spear was like a bolt of lightning, and it emitted a sharp and ear-piercing tearing sound. The figure had no choice but to stop. Because if he didn't, Then the spear would pierce through his head even if he caught hold of Yi Ling. This was a spear that could threaten him. The figure stopped abruptly, and he grabbed towards the right with his right hand, blocking the spear with his palm. Bang! The afterimage forcefully blocked the spear. And the power of this spear directly shattered the black shadow that enveloped him. The black shadow dissipated, revealing a middle-aged man with long hair that reached his shoulders. Right at this moment, a white figure flashed by, and then a leg kicked the handle of the spear in the next moment. Boom! The long-haired middle-aged man instantly retreated 100 feet. The person that attacked was precisely Enlancio. Enlancio stood in front of Yi Ling, calmly looking at the long-haired man. The latter suddenly disappeared. Enlancio's beautiful brows knit together slightly. In the blink of an eye, her arms suddenly swept horizontally forward. Boom! In an instant, Enlancio had directly appeared 300 m away, but in the next moment, she'd suddenly vanished. Rumble! An explosion suddenly resounded in front of Yi Ling, and the long-haired middle-aged man that was charging towards Yi Ling was forcefully pushed back by a formidable force. Enlancio appeared in front of Yi Ling once more. The long-haired man gazed coldly at Enlancio. He knew that if he wanted to capture Yi Ling, then he had to pass through Enlancio first. When he thought up to here, he slowly clenched his right hand, and then he suddenly stomped his right foot on the ground. Bang! The ground instantly collapsed into pieces. In the blink of an eye, an afterimage suddenly appeared in front of Enlancio. At the instant that this afterimage appeared in front of Enlancio, numerous afterimages had actually appeared in the surroundings as well. Every single afterimage was so real. Enlancio opened her palm, and then a fiery red spear suddenly appeared in her palm. In the next moment, she suddenly swept it horizontally. Hiss! The spear was like a flaming dragon, and a strand of flames instantly swept out and swept through everything. Rumble! The afterimages in the surroundings instantly vanished into thin air. At the same time, a figure instantly retreated 300 m away. It was the long-haired man. After the long-haired man was blasted back, he suddenly stretched out his right hand in the next moment, and then he pressed it down lightly. Where his palm descended, space seemed as if a pebble had fallen into the pool of water. Ripples arose from the pool of water that the pebble fell into. Enlancio's expression instantly changed drastically, and she suddenly stabbed the spear in her right hand forward. Rumble! The spear stabbed forward, and it tore through everything. In the next moment, bang! Enlancio was instantly blasted flying along with her spear, and she flew for an entire 300 m away. She just stopped when a wisp of blood seeped out from the corner of her mouth. The long-haired man had suddenly vanished. Enlancio's eyes narrowed slightly. She suddenly let go of the spear in her hand, and then she clenched her right hand into a fist before she took a step forward. At the same time, her right hand smashed forward. Brink! Her fist struck out. Bang! The space in front of her instantly collapsed, and the ground in the surroundings was instantly transformed into powder. On the other hand, the long-haired man was forcefully forced to a stop in front of Enlancio, and he gazed calmly at her. Every generation produces geniuses. Enlancio's face was emotionless, and she just stood there in front of Yi Ling. Yi Ling's expression was calm as well, and she clenched her right hand tightly while a strand of energy silently condensed within it. At this moment, numerous shrill cries resounded incessantly within the Wu Yuan. Tragic! Even if the Sword Sect and Wu Yuan joined forces, they still weren't a match for the Order Alliance. If it weren't for the various formations in Wu Yuan, all the Dao realm experts in Wu Yuan would have fallen long ago. In the air, Qin Tian hadn't made a move yet. He was waiting for Yi Xian. Yi Xian was proficient in assassination. If Yi Xian appeared, it meant that someone from the Order Alliance would definitely die. After killing them, Yi Xian would immediately hide. What he needed to do was to wait for Yi Xian to appear. Once Yi Xian appeared, he must restrain Yi Xian. Apart from the Order Alliance, there was another group of experts outside the Shenwu city. Tang Clan. When the Order Alliance attacked Wu Yuan, they had already rushed over. Besides Tang Qing, Tang Yi and Tang Feng were also present. Behind the three of them, there were 30 Tang Clan cavalrymen, all of whom were Dao realm experts. Beside Tang Qing, Tang Feng said softly, "Back then, when Zhou Yafu was still in Wu Yuan, how prestigious was Wu Yuan back then? He alone is enough to suppress my Tang Clan and the Order Alliance. But now, Then, he shook his head and didn't continue speaking. Tang Yi said with a smile, "The primordial race was so powerful back then, but didn't they still disappear? Everyone says that I control my own fate, but it's all nonsense. Who isn't immortal in front of fate?" Tang Feng smiled. "Second brother, I have a feeling that among the younger generation of the Tang clan, besides seventh brother, you're the strongest." Seventh Tang. Hearing this, Tang Qing frowned slightly. Everyone in the Tang clan knew about this person. This person was known as the most monstrous person in the Tang clan after Mu Nanji. However, he had no interest in the position of crown prince. He had left the Tang clan since young to travel. Even the clan leader couldn't do anything about him. It was worth mentioning that the seventh Tang was ranked second on the law rank. Tang Yi chuckled. "Seventh brother." Boom! At this moment, a loud noise came from below. The three of them withdrew their thoughts and looked down. In the city below, Wu Yuan's formations were disappearing one after another. Wu Yuan's experts were falling one after another, including the sword sect. In Wu Yuan, Anlanxio looked to her right and her face darkened. Wu Yuan's situation wasn't good. It was only a matter of time before they were defeated. At this moment, Wu Wen, who was fighting far away, suddenly sent a voice transmission. "Shaowen, take Yiling and leave. Take Yiling and leave." Not only did Anlanxio hear this, but the nearby Mo Xie and Lian Wanli also heard this. Obviously, Wu Wen wanted to protect the geniuses of Wu Yuan. At the same time, he felt that there was no hope. "Leave." Anlanxio looked at Yiling. "Leave." Yiling looked straight at Anlanxio. "No. I'm a member of Wu Yuan." Anlanxio smiled. "All right." As soon as she finished speaking, she looked at Mo Xie and Lian Wanli. Mo Xie pondered for a moment, and then he looked up and closed his eyes slowly. In the next moment, a powerful force suddenly emanated from his body. In the sky, Qin Tian looked at Mo Xie. The latter's body started to tremble violently. At the same time, a strange red glow emanated from his body. Qin Tian's eyes narrowed slightly. Meanwhile, Mo Xie suddenly charged into the sky, and in the blink of an eye, he collided with an enforcer of the Order Alliance. The enforcer's reaction was extremely fast. He immediately transformed into a black shadow and charged at Mo Xie. A moment of silence. Bang! Under everyone's gaze, the law enforcer was sent flying. As soon as he stopped, his body exploded and blood splattered everywhere. Mo Xie stood on the spot. His right hand was wrapped in flames, and strands of powerful aura surged out incessantly from within his body. Qin Tian's eyes instantly turned icy cold when he witnessed this scene. Tang Yi looked at Mo Xie in the dark and said softly, "This person? Bloodline awakening. Bloodline awakening." Such a person was definitely one of the top geniuses in the world. After all, the only person in the Tang family who had awakened his bloodline was the seventh young Master Tang. Of course, bloodline wasn't the only standard for experts, but those who had awakened their bloodline were definitely not weak. Right at this moment, Lian Wanli suddenly raised her saber and charged into the sky. Her target was an enforcer as well. The azure dragon saber in her hand suddenly trembled violently, and then she slashed it at the enforcer. As the saber slashed down, an azure dragon that was over 3 kilometers long suddenly flashed out from the saber. Azure dragon roar. Bang! The enforcer was instantly devoured by the azure dragon. The azure dragon circled in the sky above Divine Martial City, and strands of dragon might shook down incessantly. Qin Tian stared fixedly at the enormous dragon that was over 3 kilometers long. At this moment, he realized that he'd underestimated this genius of the younger generation in Wu Yuan. Meanwhile, Lian Wanli suddenly looked at Qin Tian and said, "Come, take this." As soon as she finished speaking, her body trembled and she charged towards Qin Tian. At the same time, the azure dragon in the sky suddenly turned into a ray of light and disappeared into Lian Wanli's saber. At this moment, she just happened to reach Qin Tian's head and slashed down with her saber. As the saber slashed down, the dragon's roar shook the heavens and earth. Qin Tian was expressionless. In the center of his palm, a ray of white light quietly condensed. In the next moment, he suddenly lifted it up. Bang! A ray of white light shot up into the sky. Bang! The white light shattered, but Lian Wanli was directly sent flying. A few hundred meters away, Lian Wanli had just stopped when a ray of sword light suddenly flashed across the battlefield. Lian Wanli's expression changed drastically. She forcefully dodged to the side, but it was still a little too late. Chi! An arm was directly sent flying. And at Lian Wanli's original position stood an old man holding a sheathed long sword. A Dao validation expert. Moreover, he was a sword saint. The old man did not stop. His sword intent enveloped Lian Wanli, and the sword in his hand suddenly trembled violently, accumulating power and waiting to be unleashed. Below, Anlanchio's expression changed drastically. Just as she was about to act, the long-haired man in front of her suddenly took a step forward, and an invisible pressure directly enveloped her. In the air, after the old swordsman's sword intent enveloped Lian Wanli, he lightly stomped his right foot, and from the sheath in his hand, a sword suddenly flew out at an extremely fast speed. Not far away, Lian Wanli knew that she had nowhere to retreat, so she fiercely slashed forward with the saber in her left hand. Sword arrived. Bang! The azure dragon saber shook violently, and Lian Wanli's left hand was directly shattered, blood splattering everywhere. And at this moment, another ray of sword light flashed across the battlefield, heading straight for Lian Wanli's forehead. At this moment, Lian Wanli knew that she could not block this sword. She slowly closed her eyes and softly said, "Yi Xian, after this queen dies, will you miss me?" Sword arrived. Chi! Blood splattered everywhere. Chapter 580. This blood wasn't Lian Wanli's blood. It was Yiling's blood. Yiling had suddenly appeared in front of Lian Wanli. Anlanchio was being held back by the long-haired man, but she wasn't being held back by anyone. So, she'd supported Lian Wanli decisively when she saw that he was in danger. At this moment, Yiling's palm was forcefully resisting that sword. However, her strength wasn't strong enough, so her palm was directly pierced through by the sword. However, it had saved Lian Wanli's life. Yiling stared fixedly at the swordsman who stood before her, and the latter suddenly pressed his fingers together and pointed. A strand of sword light flashed. Yiling disregarded the injury on her hand, and her figure shook as she charged forward and slapped her palm down. Rumble! As soon as her palm descended, the space in front of her instantly trembled violently, and a powerful force blasted directly onto the sword light. However, the sword light directly tore through Yiling's force, and it continued forward and slashed at Yiling. Yiling pressed her palms together, shouted lightly, and then suddenly moved forward. Bang! The sword light was forcefully stopped. Meanwhile, the old man suddenly vanished. Yiling's expression changed drastically, and she clenched her palm into a fist and smashed it forward. Bang! Hiss! Along with an explosion and the sound of something tearing resounding, Yiling's figure was suddenly blasted flying. At the instant that she flew through the air, she smashed heavily against a hall in the end, and she hadn't even descended to the ground when a sword suddenly stabbed into her shoulder. Hiss! Yiling's brows knit together slightly, but she didn't cry. She gritted her teeth and forcefully held on. The swordsman glanced at Yiling, and then his figure shook as he charged directly at Yiling. Right at this moment, a figure suddenly appeared in front of Yiling. It was Wu Wen. Wu Wen's expression turned savage. The profound energy within his body surged as he clenched his right hand tightly, and then a powerful force instantly condensed in his fist. In the next moment, he suddenly smashed his fist forward. Rumble! The space instantly collapsed, and the powerful force forced the swordsman to stop. However, at the next moment, a beam of sword light slashed towards Wu Wen. Wu Wen fiercely clapped his hands together. Boom! This combination directly clasped a sword, but the powerful force also shook him to the point that he was forced to retreat repeatedly. In the air, Qin Tian glanced down, but he still did not make a move. Wait. He had never looked down on Yi Xian. He also knew that Yi Xian would definitely appear. Wait. He was waiting for Yi Xian to appear. The experts of the Tang clan were waiting in secret. They knew that Yi Xian would definitely return. In Yi Xian's heart, there was nothing more important than his sister. What they needed to do was wait for Yi Xian to appear and force out Yi Xian's trump card. Then, they would let Yi Xian and Divine Martial City exhaust the Order Alliance. Tang Feng suddenly asked, "Are there any movements from the demons?" Demons? Tang Qing shook his head. "There's no news." Tang Feng nodded slightly. Let's wait. Below, in Wu Yuan. At this moment, there were only a few arrays left in Wu Yuan. Among them, 6 or 7 Dao realm experts had fallen, and 8 or 9 Dao realm swordsmen from the sword sect had fallen. It could be said that they had suffered heavy losses. In the air, the swordsman from the Order Alliance suddenly walked towards Wu Wen. At this moment, Wu Wen's body had unknowingly appeared with over 10 beams of sword light. Facing a Dao realm sword sage, it was still rather strenuous for him. At this moment, the only transcendent sword sage, Yu Wuchen, was also being held back by 2 Dao validation experts. Although Yu Wuchen had the upper hand, he could not do anything to the other party in a short period of time. Wu Wen looked around. At this moment, the ground around the martial sect was littered with corpses. Among them, there were experts from the older generation, but most of them were from the younger generation. Looking at those young faces, Wu Wen clenched his fists, and his heart felt like it was being cut by a knife. This was what it meant to be a weakling. In a world where the strong were revered, the weak could only be bullied and slaughtered by others. Wu Wen looked at He Liantian, Qin Shan, and the rest who were not far away. At this moment, He Liantian, Qin Shan, and the rest were only holding on bitterly. The 2 of them were not in good condition and could not hold on for much longer. Not only had many experts from Wu Yuan died, but many of the swordsmen from the sword sect had also fallen. There was no hope. Wu Wen turned to look at Yi Ling, who was pinned to the wall with a complicated expression. Lass, why aren't you leaving? Yi Ling clenched her fists tightly. My brother said that if people don't betray me, I won't betray them. Wu Wen smiled faintly. You have a good brother. As he spoke, he turned to look at a group of Order Alliance members not far away and said softly, Little fellows, you must remember. Remember today. Remember how our Wu Yuan was bullied and humiliated by others today. In this world, there is no right or wrong, only the strong and the weak. Being weak is the original sin. As soon as he finished speaking, a flame suddenly ignited in his body. Soul ignition. When they witnessed this scene, the expressions of everyone in Wu Yuan instantly changed drastically. Dean! The eyes of countless experts from Wu Yuan almost popped out of their sockets. However, they were being held back by the experts from the Order Alliance, and they were utterly unable to stop it. Behind Wu Wen, Yi Ling's tears flowed down her cheeks. Grandpa Wu, Wu Wen said softly. Lass, remember. Once a person is weak, they will be bullied. So, you must become strong. You can only walk the path after this by yourself. As soon as he finished speaking, he suddenly transformed into a ball of flames and charged towards the experts from the Order Alliance. Nearby, the old swordsman from the Order Alliance suddenly said, All of you retreat. As soon as he finished speaking, the law enforcers behind him retreated. The old swordsman clenched the sword in his hand tightly. The sword in his hand trembled violently, and it didn't take long for a destructive force to appear before him. The old man raised his hand and slashed down. Slash. As soon as the sword slashed down, the cry of the sword shook the sky, and a wave of sword light slashed down towards Wu Wen like a storm. Rumble! Rumble! Explosions resounded incessantly in Wu Yuan. Under the gazes of countless people, the old swordsman retreated again and again. In the end, he retreated until he was outside Shenwu City. At this moment, the entire Wu Yuan was in a mess. Wu Yuan could be said to have been basically destroyed. The powerful aftershock of the explosion directly disrupted the battlefield and the surroundings. However, both sides didn't stop, and the Order Alliance still had the upper hand. Now, it was only a matter of time before Wu Yuan and the Sword Sect were defeated. Outside Shenwu City, the old swordsman stopped, and a wisp of blood slowly seeped out from the corner of his mouth. In that instant just now, he'd forcefully resisted the force of Wu Wen's self-destruction. How terrifying was the force of the self-destruction of an expert like Wu Wen. The injuries that the old swordsman suffered could be said to be very serious. But fortunately, with Wu Wen's death, Yu Wuchen was being held back, and now, the great formation of Wu Yuan had basically been destroyed. Right now, in Wu Yuan, only in Lanxiu, Mo Xie, and Yu Wuchen still had the strength to fight. The old swordsman wiped the blood from the corner of his mouth and walked towards Wu Yuan. Inside Wu Yuan, Yi Ling was guarding beside Lian Wanli. Both of Lian Wanli's arms had been chopped off, and his injuries were extremely serious. Yi Ling took out a huge pile of divine crystals and placed them in Lian Wanli's arms. Sister Lien, you take care. After saying that, she turned and walked towards the old swordsman. Behind her, Lien Wanli said weakly, "Don't go." Yiling shook her head. At this moment, her tears were no longer flowing. She slowly walked towards the old swordsman. In midair, Qin Tian glanced at Yiling, but he still didn't make a move. On the ground below, Yiling stopped when she arrived at where Wu Wen had been standing. She looked in front of her, and tears unknowingly flowed from her eyes. She'd really treated Wu Wen like family. At this moment, the old swordsman suddenly pressed his fingers together and pointed forward, causing a ray of sword light to shoot out. Yiling suddenly raised her head and swung her hands forward. 2 strands of energy swept out from the center of her palms. However, these 2 strands of energy had only just appeared when they were directly slashed into pieces by the ray of sword light. In the next moment, the ray of sword light pierced her left shoulder, and the powerful force dragged her backwards. In the end, the sword pinned her to the top of the palace, and as soon as it stopped, another sword silently arrived and pierced her right shoulder. Just like that, Yiling was pinned to the top of the palace by 2 swords, and her clothes had already been dyed red with blood. Yiling gritted her teeth. Even though she was in pain, she didn't make a sound. In the distance, the old swordsman was about to make a move when Yiling suddenly closed her eyes and roared furiously, "Brother!" Bas! The cry of a sword suddenly resounded in the sky. In midair, Qin Tian's eyes narrowed slightly, and he slowly clenched his right fist. In the dark, all the Tang clan's powerhouses looked in front of Yiling. A man had appeared there at some point. The man was Yi Xian. Qin Tian frowned slightly when he saw Yi Xian. He hadn't expected Yi Xian to appear in the open instead of hiding in the dark to assassinate him. This had exceeded his expectations. However, this was naturally a good thing for him. If Yi Xian had been hiding in the dark, he would have been a little afraid. However, if Yi Xian had come out in the open, his combat power was at most equivalent to a knowing state cultivator. Yi Xian walked to the front of the dilapidated palace. When he saw Yiling, who was pinned to the palace by 2 swords and covered in blood, Yi Xian was stunned. The next moment, Yi Xian slapped himself. "I'm late. I'm late. I'm late." Yi Xian clenched his fists, feeling as if his heart was being cut by a knife. He clenched his fists so tightly that his nails dug into his palms, causing blood to flow. Tremble! Yi Xian's whole body began to tremble violently. At this moment, the blood in his body began to slowly boil. At the same time, rays of red light gradually appeared around his body. Anger. Self-blame. Of course, most of it was anger. Yi Xian had never been so angry before. The intensity of his anger was rarely seen. Under the influence of this anger, the blood in his body boiled more and more, and the red light around his body grew brighter. Not only that, but his hair also began to slowly change color. At this moment, Yi Xian's expression suddenly contorted, as if he was in extreme pain. Catharsis. He felt like he was about to explode. In the distance, the swordsman frowned. He was about to make a move when Qin Tian suddenly said, "He's possessed." Going berserk? The swordsman looked at Yi Xian. Sure enough, Yi Xian's mouth was dripping with blood. Critical point. His anger and blood had reached a critical point, but he was so close to a breakthrough. However, if he couldn't break through this point, he would undoubtedly die. In the air, Qin Tian shook his head. How dramatic. I didn't expect the genius swordsman to force himself to death. At this moment, Yiling suddenly said, "Brother, they're bullying me. Beat them to death, beat them to death." Hearing this, Yi Xian opened his eyes abruptly. His eyes were bloodshot. Almost at the same time, his black hair instantly turned blood red. Rumble. A ray of red light shot into the sky. The sky was dyed red. Chapter 581. The expressions of everyone in the surroundings changed. In the air, Qin Tian stared at Yi Xian. At this moment, his face was very pale. In the dark, Tang Feng suddenly said softly, "This is bloodline awakening. Bloodline awakening." Tang Qing stared at Yi Xian without saying a word. Inside the prison pagoda, Yu opened her eyes and frowned. After a moment of silence, she closed her eyes again. No wonder. In the Wu Yuan below, powerful auras were constantly emitted from Yi Xian's body. At the same time, his expression was extremely savage. At this moment, Yi Xian was like a wild beast that had gone berserk. Yi Xian stared at the swordsman from the Order Alliance in the distance. His eyes were blood-red, sending chills down one's spine. The swordsman looked at Yi Xian with a solemn expression. However, there was no fear in his eyes. The sword in his hand trembled slightly. At this moment, Yi Xian suddenly roared. "Old dog!" In the next moment, a blood-red sword gleam flashed across the battlefield. Bas! The sword hum tore through the sky and shook the clouds. Yi Xian was extremely fast. He instantly arrived in front of the old man. This time, he did not use his flying sword. Instead, he drew his sword to determine life and death. Drawing his sword to determine life and death in a rage. In this state, the power of Yi Xian's sword was on a completely different level from the previous drawing sword to determine life and death. The swordsman's expression instantly changed when he drew his sword. His eyes were filled with shock. Without any time to think, the swordsman stabbed forward with his sword in his right hand. The sword moved like lightning and a cold gleam appeared. The two swords clashed head-on in the most direct way. It was a tit for tat. Yi Xian's sword fell. Boom! The sword in the swordsman's hand instantly shattered. At the same time, he was sent flying several hundred zhang away. As he retreated, the space was torn inch by inch. It was extremely terrifying. Seeing this scene, Qin Tian's expression instantly changed. Not only Qin Tian, but the hidden Tang clan experts were also shocked. Shattering a sword saint's sword with a single strike? Below, Yi Xian did not stop after he destroyed the swordsman's sword. He appeared in front of the swordsman again and slashed down with his sword. The old swordsman's expression instantly turned ferocious. He ignored the injuries on his body and used both his hands to guide rebirth upwards. Bas! In an instant, countless sword lights soared into the sky and engulfed Yi Xian. However, as Yi Xian slashed down with his sword, the sword lights vanished. In the next moment, the swordsman was pushed back once again. As he was pushed back, he spat out a mouthful of blood. Yi Xian was just about to attack again when Qin Tian's figure suddenly flashed over to Yi Xian. Yi Xian suddenly roared furiously, and then he raised his sword and slashed down. Qin Tian spread open his right palm, and then an expanse of white light instantly enveloped Yi Xian's sword light. Rumble! The white light instantly shattered. At the same time, Qin Tian's figure instantly retreated by over 1 kilometer. As soon as Qin Tian stopped moving, Yi Xian had already appeared in front of the swordsman. The old man didn't even have the time to react before Yi Xian's sword nailed him to the ground. The swordsman stared fixedly at Yi Xian. "You're a sword saint." A sword saint. As soon as these words were spoken, everyone here was shocked. Qin Tian gazed at Yi Xian with slight disbelief as well. Actually, he'd noticed that Yi Xian was a sword saint when Yi Xian had slashed him back. A sword saint. Such a young sword saint. Qin Tian was extremely terrified when he thought about it. Yi Xian paid no attention to them, and he walked over to the swordsman. The old man was about to speak when Yi Xian suddenly stabbed his sword into the old man's throat. Hiss! Blood sprayed. In the next moment, under everyone's gaze, Yi Xian swung his sword wildly. In an instant, the old swordsman's body was cut into pieces. In next to no time, only a pool of blood and bits of flesh remained in front of Yi Xian. Qin Tian's face was gloomy to the extreme when he witnessed this scene. After Yi Xian killed the swordsman, he suddenly turned around. In the next moment, a ray of red light flashed, and the expressions of the nearby law enforcers changed drastically. They were Yi Xian's targets. The law enforcers didn't fall into disorder, and 2 of them charged directly at Yi Xian. However, their heads flew soundlessly into the air before they could even get close to Yi Xian. Flying swords. At this moment, Yi Xian's flying swords were so fast that even a knowledge realm powerhouse couldn't stop them. Yi Xian stopped, and he suddenly stretched out his left hand. In the next moment, the blood on the ground suddenly trembled, and soon, the blood condensed into blood swords under everyone's gazes. Qin Tian's expression changed drastically. Retreat! Not far away, the law enforcers immediately retreated, but Yi Xian's blood swords were even faster. Hiss! 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 countless blood swords shuttled through the battlefield, and in an instant, the heads of 9 law enforcers flew into the air. As for the rest of the law enforcers, they had all retreated from Wu Yuan. Instant kill. In the sky, Qin Tian's expression was terrifyingly gloomy. He didn't expect that Yi Xian wasn't just a sword saint, but he had also awakened his bloodline. He didn't know how strong Yi Xian was now. Thinking of this, Qin Tian had the intention to retreat. At this moment, Yi Xian suddenly soared into the sky. In the next moment, countless flying swords shot towards the keepers of order. The expressions of the law enforcers changed drastically when they witnessed this scene, and they joined forces to resist it. Qin Tian raised his head and looked up into the sky. Meanwhile, a voice entered his mind. Retreat! Retreat! Qin Tian's expression was slightly ferocious. Elder Ku, Wu Yuan and the Sword Sect have lost over 80% of their Dao realm experts. Now we just have to deal with Yi Xian, and then our Order Alliance will be able to take control of Divine Martial City. If we retreat now, then all our efforts will be for naught. Elder Ku said, his current strength has surpassed the Dao validation realm. Do you know that? Qin Tian spoke fiercely. So what? His bloodline has just been activated, so how long can it last? If we don't kill him with all our might, then could it be that we're going to allow him to continue growing? In the void, Elder Ku remained silent. Moreover, law enforcers were dying incessantly in the distance. Presently, anyone who obstructed Yi Xian would simply die. Moreover, all those who died in his hands died extremely miserably. At this moment, Qin Tian suddenly roared. This person is already a sword saint. Are we going to let him grow into an extraordinary sword saint? At that time, who can kill him? It's better to sacrifice a little now than to leave behind a great calamity in the future. After a moment of silence, a voice resounded in the sky. Kill! As soon as the voice resounded, a dozen powerful auras suddenly charged down from the sky. In the darkness far away, Tang Feng frowned slightly. Attack! Tang Qing was about to speak when Tang Yi said with a smile. Why should we attack now? Let's see what Yi Xian's limit is. Tang Feng nodded. That's true. Whether Yi Xian is dead or alive, he should be able to exhaust the Order Alliance. At this point he looked at Tang Qing. What do you think, big sister? Tang Qing was expressionless. Whatever you say. Tang Feng smiled faintly and turned his head to look down. In addition to the dozen newly joined Knowledge Realm powerhouses, there were also 2 Dao validation powerhouses, and these 2 people directly blocked Yi Xian. However, what made everyone speechless was that these 2 Dao validation powerhouses were actually suppressed by Yi Xian. Seeing this scene, Qin Tian slowly clenched his right hand and turned to look at Yi Ling below. Capture that little girl first. Capture Yi Ling. Yi Ling was Yi Xian's nemesis. As long as Yi Ling was caught, Yi Xian would definitely be captured. As soon as Qin Tian's voice fell, several figures directly rushed towards Yi Ling below. At this moment, Yi Xian, who was fighting with the 2 Dao validation powerhouses, suddenly slashed them back with his sword. He held the soul-suppressing sword in his hand and suddenly pointed to the right. Split! As soon as he said this, the Knowledge Realm powerhouse who was rushing towards Yi Ling stopped in place and then fell straight down. His soul dissipated. At this moment, Yi Xian pointed his sword in the air again. Another Knowing Realm powerhouse fell. At this moment, everyone in the surroundings was flabbergasted by this scene. Qin Tian had a look of disbelief on his face as well. What the hell is going on? In secret, the expressions of Tang Qing and the others became solemn. Even Tang Yi had a trace of seriousness and vigilance in his eyes. Every single one of Yi Xian's trump cards was slightly terrifying. How many more does he have? Down below, the Dao Knowledge State experts who had not yet reached Yi Ling all fell to the ground silently. Their souls had vanished, and only their bodies remained. At this moment, the keepers of order in the surroundings were slightly panicking. After Yi Xian killed the powerhouses that were charging towards Yi Ling, he turned to look at the 2 people in front of him. At this moment, not only did his aura not weaken, it was constantly growing. Especially the murderous intent on his body. It was so strong that no one dared to approach him. At this moment, Yi Xian held the soul-suppressing sword tightly in his right hand, and his body was enveloped by a bloody glow. His blood was boiling, and an endless stream of bloodline power spread throughout his body. As this power filled his body, He felt full of strength. Boundless power. This power didn't belong to him, but the power of his bloodline. Of course, strictly speaking, it was also his own power. After all, it was his bloodline. At this moment, Yi Xian suddenly vanished on the spot. Nearby, the expressions of the two Tao-proving realm powerhouses changed drastically, and they hurriedly attacked together. Rumble! Along with an explosion, the two Tao-proving realm powerhouses were forced back hundreds of meters by Yi Xian. As soon as they stopped, two flying swords silently appeared in front of them. Quick! This was the first thought that came to their minds. They joined their hands together and caught the two swords at the same time. But at this moment, Yi Xian suddenly appeared in front of one of the Tao-proving realm powerhouses. In the next moment, he drew his sword and slashed. Draw the sword to decide life and death. The Tao-proving realm powerhouse's pupils constricted when the sword slashed down, and he held onto Yi Xian's flying sword with both hands as he raised it horizontally to block. The sword descended. Bang! The Tao-proving realm powerhouse was directly blasted hundreds of meters away, and as soon as he stopped, a blood-red flying sword pierced through the center of his forehead. A Tao-proving realm powerhouse had fallen. The surroundings suddenly fell silent. He'd killed a Tao-proving realm powerhouse while fighting two by himself. At this moment, there was disbelief in his eyes, and there was also fear, deep fear. Suddenly, the space in the sky above Wu Yuan cracked open, and then a figure flashed out like a bolt of lightning towards Yi Xian. Yi Xian drew his sword and slashed down. Bang! In an instant, Yi Xian retreated hundreds of meters explosively, and as soon as he stopped, a wisp of blood slowly flowed out from the corner of his mouth. In the darkness nearby, Tang Yi looked at the person in front of Yi Xian and said softly, "Wang Zhizi." Tang Qing and Tang Feng's expressions instantly changed when they heard Tang Yi. The sage of calligraphy, Wang Zhizi, the second on the Tao ranking of the previous generation. P.S. You scolded me at the second watch, and you loved me at the third watch. What about the fourth watch? Chapter 582. He was ranked second on the previous Tao rankings. The Tao rankings were updated every 30 years. There were a total of 10 people on the previous Tao rankings, and Wang Zhizi was one of them. Moreover, he was ranked second. Moreover, Wang Zhizi was one of the 9 saints. Besides the unknown divine kingdom, there were 6 supreme experts in the chaotic universe. They were the Order Alliance's Master of the Star, the Southern Sect's Martial Master, the Tang Clan's Patriarch, the Monster King of the Demon Race, and 2 others who were unknown. Besides these 6 supreme experts, there were 9 other saints. Wang Zhizi was one of them, the saint of calligraphy. Moreover, he was an extraordinary saint of calligraphy. Strictly speaking, Yu Wuchen could be ranked amongst them as well after he attained the extraordinary sword saint realm. After all, ordinary Tao substantiation realm experts couldn't compare to them. Surmounting their realms of cultivation to challenge them? It was as difficult as ascending to the heavens. Because all of them were experts who could surmount their realms of cultivation to do so all those years ago. In the field, Qin Tian bowed slightly to Wang Ciji, Wang Sheng. Wang Zhizi nodded, and then he gazed at Yi Xian. He sized up Yi Xian and said, "The power of bloodline." Suddenly, a sword howl resounded from afar. Wang Zhizi looked up and saw a Tao substantiation realm expert descend slowly from the sky. It was the expert from the Order Alliance who'd fought Yu Wuchen earlier. Even though 2 Tao substantiation realm experts could keep Yu Wuchen busy for a while, they couldn't defeat Yu Wuchen. The remaining Tao substantiation realm expert didn't attack again, and he retreated instead. Yu Wuchen didn't chase after him. He descended in front of Wang Zhizi and gazed coldly at Wang Zhizi. The latter shook his head. "I'm not your match." As soon as he finished speaking, an old man suddenly appeared in front of Yu Wuchen like a ghost. The old man wore a tight-fitting robe, had a thin figure, and had his right hand behind his back. His gaze was sharp like a blade. He was powerful. Yu Wuchen's expression turned solemn. The old man's strength was definitely not inferior to Wang Zhizi, but he didn't know who he was. At this moment, Wang Ciji, who was not far away, looked at Yi Xian. "Come, let me see how many trump cards you still have." Yi Xian slowly closed his eyes. At this moment, the blood in his body was still boiling, and the power was still increasing. However, That power was eroding his consciousness. Gradually, Yi Xian's consciousness became more and more muddled. Slaughter. There was only one thought left in his mind. Slaughter. As everyone watched, Yi Xian walked towards Wang Jitsa with the soul-subduing sword in his hand. At this moment, the soul-subduing sword had actually turned blood-red. Wang Jitsa calmly looked at Yi Xian. He did not look down on Yi Xian. Of course, he did not pay much attention to Yi Xian either. From the beginning until now, he had seen too many geniuses and killed too many geniuses. Confidence. His strength allowed him to be so confident. At this moment, Yi Xian suddenly leaped up. In the blink of an eye, he arrived above Wang Jitsa's head and slashed down with his sword. Draw the sword and decide life and death. His sword carried a peerlessly domineering aura. It seemed like this attack could kill anyone. Countless people in the surroundings sensed this aura. Wang Jitsa had an emotionless expression on his face as he stood below Yi Xian. He flicked his sleeve, and space trembled slightly. In the next moment, bang! Yi Xian was instantly sent flying thousands of feet away along with his sword. After he blasted Yi Xian flying, Wang Jitsa suddenly made a grabbing motion with his right hand. As soon as he did that, a ray of light that had suddenly appeared in his grasp, and then he clenched his right fist lightly. Bang! The ray of light was instantly blasted into pieces. Wang Jitsa gazed at Yi Xian. Meanwhile, Yi Xian suddenly vanished once more, and then a ray of blood-red light tore through the surroundings. Hiss! Ear-piercing explosions resounded incessantly like firecrackers. Meanwhile, Wang Jitsa took a step forward and tapped his finger forward. The space around his finger trembled slightly, and a powerful force suddenly blocked the blood-red sword light. After a moment of silence, the blood-red sword light exploded, and in that instant, a sword slashed down from above his head. Wang Jitsa didn't dodge, and he met it with his fist instead. Bang! At the instant that Yi Xian's sword slashed against Wang Jitsa's fist, the space in the surroundings trembled violently before cracking apart. It was also at this instant that Wang Jitsa's brows suddenly knit together. In the next moment, he flashed over 100 m back, and then he tapped the center of his forehead with his finger. In an instant, his soul calmed down. In that instant just now, something had actually happened to his soul. Wang Jitsa raised his head and looked towards his opponent. Suddenly, a flying sword soundlessly slashed towards him. He pressed his fingers together and clamped down on the flying sword, and then he exerted force lightly. Bang! The flying sword shattered. But it didn't take long for countless rays of blood-red light to suddenly slash down towards him. The dense expanse of flying swords instantly drowned Wang Jitsa beneath them. At this moment, Wang Jitsa took a step forward and smashed his fist forward. Bang! It was merely an ordinary punch, yet the rays of light were obliterated. It was a crushing defeat. Everyone was looking at Yi Xian and Wang Jitsa. It was undeniable that Yi Xian was very strong indeed, but the gap between him and Wang Jitsa was too huge. Perhaps Yi Xian wouldn't be inferior to Wang Jitsa in the future, but Yi Xian wasn't a match for Wang Jitsa at all. Wang Jitsa walked slowly towards Yi Xian. Needless to say, you really aren't bad. Of course, that's exactly why you must die here today. As soon as he finished speaking, he slowly clenched his right fist, and then a strand of energy silently condensed. In the distance, Yu Wuchen's face darkened. At this moment, he naturally wanted to help, but the petite old man's divine sense had locked onto him. As soon as he made a move, the petite old man would definitely act as well. At this moment, Yi Xian turned to look at Yi Ling, who wasn't far away. Yi Ling didn't cry. She just looked at Yi Xian and said, "Brother, I'm not afraid. Really, I'm not afraid at all." Yi Xian's hand trembled slightly. He grinned, but it was a somewhat sinister smile. It's all right. Brother is here." As soon as he finished speaking, he turned around and charged towards Wang Jitsa. Bang! A powerful force swept out from Yi Xian's body. At this moment, he didn't hold anything back. Dragon Soul Power. Dragon Power. Emoku Power. Divine Blood Technique. Coupled with the power of his bloodline, the aura that Yi Xian erupted with could only be described as terrifying. This had surpassed the aura of a Dao validation expert. As he charged towards Wang Jitsa, the aura on Yi Xian's body grew stronger and stronger. Soon, He arrived in front of Wang Jitsa and slashed down with his sword. This sword contained far too much. Of course, the most important thing was his conviction. At this moment, his younger sister was behind him. If he retreated, his younger sister would definitely die. He, Yi Xian, had nowhere to retreat. Since he couldn't retreat, then he would advance. He would carve out a path. Draw the sword to decide life and death. With this sword, Yi Xian's killing intent was unprecedentedly strong. At this moment, Wang Jitsa took a step forward and met the sword with his fist. As everyone watched, Yi Xian's sword slashed down fiercely. Bang! As a deafening explosion rang out, Yi Xian was instantly sent flying along with his sword. However, Wang Jitsa was also forced to retreat a good 300 meters. The expressions of everyone in the dark changed at the sight of this. Yi Xian had actually pushed Wang Jitsa back with a single strike of his sword. Wang Jitsa glanced at his palm. There was a deep sword scar on his palm. A scar. Wang Jitsa raised his head to look at Yi Xian. Meanwhile, Yi Xian was walking towards him again. At this moment, Yi Xian seemed to have gone mad. His expression was savage and warped, and his body emanated a strange red glow. He seemed like a wild beast that had gone berserk. Suddenly, Yi Xian vanished on the spot. Hiss! A ray of blood-red light flashed, and everywhere it passed, space was torn apart like fragile paper. Wang Jitsa's eyes narrowed slightly as he stood in front of Yi Xian, and a strand of killing intent flashed through them. In the next moment, he charged forward swiftly and smashed his fist down. Rumble! The space around them suddenly collapsed and fell into pitch-black darkness. A few breaths of time later. Bang! Another explosion resounded, and then a figure retreated explosively. It was Yi Xian. However, Wang Jitsa had also retreated several dozen meters. After Yi Xian stopped, blood seeped out of the corner of his mouth once more. Not only that, but his entire body had also split open and blood flowed out incessantly. However, the blood was quickly absorbed by him. In the distance, Wang Jitsa also had 2 sword scars on his body. He had been injured by Yi Xian. Qin Tian's expression darkened at the sight of this, and no one knew what he was thinking. At this moment, Tang Feng said softly in the dark, "This Yi Xian is probably reaching his limit." Tang Qing said, "Should we make a move?" Tang Yi shook his head. "It's not time yet. If we make a move now, we'll have to pay a huge price." Tang Feng nodded. "That skinny old man and Wang Jitsa. Just these 2 alone are enough to make us lose many Tang clan knights." As he spoke, he looked down at Yi Xian and said, "Let's continue waiting and see if he has any other trump cards." Tang Qing did not say anything. She just looked down, and no one knew what she was thinking. Below, in Wu Yuan, Wang Jitsa looked at Yi Xian. At this moment, his eyes were filled with undisguised killing intent. In the next moment, he directly rushed toward Yi Xian. He was extremely fast, and in the blink of an eye, he arrived in front of Yi Xian. Yi Xian did not choose to retreat. Instead, he held his sword with both hands and slashed forward. Qi! The blood-red sword Qi slashed to the end. As Wang Jitsa punched out, the blood-red sword Qi directly exploded. At the same time, a powerful force directly engulfed Yi Xian. Bang! Yi Xian brandished his sword rapidly. Streaks of blood-red sword lights kept striking out. However, Wang Jitsa's strength was too strong. Therefore, he kept being forced to retreat. Meanwhile, Qin Tian's figure suddenly shook, and then he flashed towards Yi Ling. Obviously, he wanted to take down Yi Ling first. Not far away, when Yi Xian saw this, his expression instantly turned savage. In the next moment, he directly ignored Wang Jitsa and his figure trembled, appearing in front of Yi Ling. When he saw Yi Xian, Qin Tian's expression changed, and he immediately wanted to retreat. At this moment, Yi Xian suddenly roared, "Those who hurt my sister die." As soon as he spoke, he suddenly disappeared, and in the next moment, he appeared in front of Qin Tian. Yi Xian suddenly drew his sword and slashed. Bas! A blood-red sword Qi directly slashed down. Bang! Qin Tian was sent flying in an instant. The moment he was sent flying, a ray of sword light pierced through his forehead. Qi! Blood splattered. In the battlefield, Yi Xian looked around angrily and roared like a wild beast. Who else? At this moment, the blood in his body completely boiled, and waves of killing intent surged out like a tide. In the distance, Wang Jitsa stared fixedly at Yi Xian. What bloodline? The more abnormal, the stronger. Chapter 583. He killed Qin Tian in an instant. Needless to say, Yi Xian's attack had shocked everyone. Even someone as powerful as Wang Jitsa was slightly shocked. Qin Tian was a Dao Validation Realm expert, and he wasn't just any Dao Validation Realm expert. However, he was killed by Yi Xian with just 2 attacks. Moreover, the aura that Yi Xian exuded was even stronger than before. Especially in that instant, the power of Yi Xian's attack wasn't just a little bit stronger than before. After Yi Xian killed Qin Tian with a single attack, the surroundings suddenly fell silent. Everyone was looking at Yi Xian, this extremely abnormal young man. At this moment, Yi Xian suddenly clenched his left hand. In the blink of an eye, the blood on the ground in the Wuyuan suddenly trembled. Then, the blood actually transformed into blood swords under everyone's gazes. The surrounding experts of the Order Alliance started to retreat slowly. At the same time, their expressions were extremely cautious. They were extremely fearful of Yi Xian, especially Yi Xian's flying swords. Ordinary people couldn't stop them at all. Wang Jitsa looked at Yi Xian. A black book had appeared in the latter's palm. At this moment, Yi Xian suddenly pointed at Wang Jitsa from afar. Slash! In an instant, thousands of blood swords suddenly shot towards Wang Jitsa. Almost every single one of them could easily tear space apart. The reason why these flying swords were so powerful was because they were enhanced by the dragon soul energy. For the first time, a trace of seriousness appeared in Wang Jitsa's eyes. He suddenly flipped open the black book in his hand as he looked at the countless blood swords. In the next moment, he started chanting silently. Countless black ancient characters suddenly flew out from the book, and they directly flew towards Yi Xian's blood swords. Chi 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 chi. The sound of corrosion resounded incessantly. Under everyone's gazes, the blood swords disappeared one after another. In the sky, Tang Yi said softly, "The Book of Holy Words." Tang Feng looked at Tang Yi and asked, "What is the Book of Holy Words?" Tang Yi said softly, "In Wang Jitsa's hands, the power of a peak stage creation treasure has increased by at least 50%. I'm afraid it can be compared to a Dao realm treasure." As he spoke, he looked at Yi Xian. Let's see how he'll deal with this. As soon as Tang Yi finished speaking, a throne suddenly appeared in front of Yi Xian. The God King's throne. Under everyone's gaze, Yi Xian suddenly sat down and clenched his left hand. In an instant, all the spiritual qi within a radius of 1,000 li was absorbed cleanly, and the black ancient characters in front of Wang Jitsa also disappeared without a trace at this moment. Countless blood swords instantly drowned Wang Jitsa. Rumble! Wang Jitsa was pushed almost 300 m back before Yi Xian. At this moment, even though the blood swords had vanished, there were actually over a dozen scars all over his body. Everyone's gazes descended onto Yi Xian, who sat on the God King's throne. To be more precise, they were looking at the God King's throne that Yi Xian sat on. A Dao realm treasure. Even great powers like the Tang clan and Order Alliance didn't have many such treasures. In fact, they could be counted on one hand. However, Yi Xian actually possessed a Dao realm treasure. Countless strands of spiritual qi converged madly towards Yi Xian, and they were about to surge towards the God King's throne. However, Yi Xian suddenly started to forcefully absorb the spiritual qi. He desperately needed the spiritual qi right now. The God King's throne was just about to resist when the energy of Yi Xian's bloodline suppressed the God King's throne, and then countless strands of spiritual qi instantly surged into Yi Xian's body. Yi Xian greedily took a deep breath. At this moment, he felt like he had an inexhaustible supply of spiritual qi within him. Wang Jitsa glanced at the Book of Holy Wisdom that stood before Yi Xian. At this moment, the Book of Holy Wisdom had lost its effect. Because activating the Book of Holy Wisdom required a huge amount of spiritual qi, and all the spiritual qi in an area of 500 kilometers had vanished. How do I activate it? Moreover, all the spiritual qi had been absorbed by Yi Xian. Wang Jitsa gazed at Yi Xian. Suddenly, Yi Xian vanished. Wang Jitsa's eyes narrowed slightly, and then he vanished as well. It didn't take long for Wang Jitsa and Yi Xian to enter into battle once more. Wang Jitsa had the upper hand, But Yi Xian gave off the feeling that he was getting stronger as the battle went on. Especially his flying sword. Even Wang Jitsa didn't dare to be careless. Meanwhile, the rest of the experts didn't move at all. After Yi Xian killed a batch of the law enforcers, the Law Alliance no longer had an overwhelming advantage. Especially now, there was still Mo Xie and Enlancio on Wu Yuan's side. The strength of these two people was something that the Law Alliance's law enforcers feared. In the dark, Tang Yi smiled. It's a deadlock. Tang Feng nodded. If this deadlock continues, it will be more advantageous for us. As for the Law Alliance, Tang Qing said softly, the Law Alliance can either retreat or send more experts. Tang Yi smiled. I hope that they will send more experts. Because this way, we can see if Yi Xian has any other trump cards. Tang Qing's expression was calm, and he didn't say anything. Tang Yi looked down at Yi Xian and smiled. Fortunately, my Tang clan didn't force Yi Xian to his death. Otherwise, we would be the ones to suffer losses. Tang Feng nodded. This person is so strong. We and the Law Alliance have greatly underestimated him. Tang Yi was about to speak when he suddenly looked up at the sky. Somewhere in the sky, the space suddenly split open. In the next moment, two old men walked out. Seeing these two people, Tang Yi's expression immediately became somewhat solemn. Experts above the Dao validation realm. These two people might not be stronger than Wang Jitsa. However, in this situation, the Law Alliance had two more experts of this level. It was almost certain that they would win. At this moment, another three men in black appeared behind the old man. These three men in black were all at the Dao Confirmation Realm. Dao Confirmation Realm Law Enforcers. 5 people. In the dark, Tang Yi said softly, "It's over." In the sky, the two old men and the 3 Dao Confirmation Realm Law Enforcers suddenly disappeared. In the next moment, several powerful auras charged directly at Yi Ling. Their target was Yi Ling. Sensing this, Yi Xian, who was fighting Wang Jitsa, suddenly turned around and returned to Yi Xian. Looking at the 5 people charging at him, Yi Xian roared and slashed forward. Bas! With the sound of a sword, a blood-red sword gleam surged out. However, the blood-red sword gleam was instantly shattered by the 5 people. Not only that, but Wang Jitsa also charged at him. 6 pinnacle experts. Behind Yi Xian, Yi Ling suddenly walked to his side. She held Yi Xian's hand and cried silently. "Brother, am I too useless? No matter how hard I try, I can't help you." When Yi Xian, who was already acting abnormally, heard Yi Ling's words, his hands trembled slightly. In the next moment he said painfully, Don't be afraid. I'm here." As soon as he said that, he stomped his right foot and the great Dao Law suddenly appeared between his brows. In an instant, the power of the earth and the power of the earth veins in the surroundings converged toward Yi Xian like a tide. At that moment, a sheathed sword suddenly appeared in front of Yi Xian. The sword trembled violently as if it wanted Yi Xian to pull it out. Because it knew that this was the only time Yi Xian could pull it out. This was because Yi Xian not only had the power of the dragon soul and the power of the bloodline, but he also had the power of the earth and the power of the earth veins. This was Yi Xian's strongest moment. Looking at the group of people charging at him, Yi Xian did not hesitate at all. He grabbed the hilt of the sword and pulled it out. Buzz! The hum of a sword soared into the sky. A sword appeared in Yi Xian's hand. The moment this sword appeared, countless dark clouds suddenly appeared in the sky above the divine martial art city. In the next moment, bolts of purple lightning flashed continuously within the clouds, and waves of pressure from the heavens and the earth pressed down on the ground. Purple divine lightning. Wang Jitsa and the others stopped in their tracks, their eyes filled with shock. This purple divine lightning was the legendary divine lightning. How could it appear? One must know that this type of divine lightning would usually only appear when an extremely heaven-defying genius broke through. For example, in the records, it had only appeared when Gu Tatian, Zhou Yafu of Wu Yuan, and Mu Nanji of the Tang clan broke through. You're tuning into the Xueqi's Martial Arts Saga YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.